were basically getting dropped into an enemy village for 7 months to do VSO. And the fighting season is just starting. The team that we were replacing, they had been there for a month and they were getting attacked so bad. So how are we going to live there for 7 months? Day one, I get there. The team that was there, they're under attack. Within a couple hours, one of my guys loses both of his legs above the knee. So it was definitely like, whoa, this is real, real fast. We pretty much were under attack almost the whole deployment. And so it was like, this is going to be a crazy experience.
Before we get into the insider attack, are there any other operations during that deployment that had a significant impact on you?
I would be lying if I didn't bring up the June 14th, 2012 op that we had. So
since the Civil War, dogs have stood alongside our military, proving to be indispensable partners. Our military prioritized ensuring proper K9 nutrition for optimal performance, recognizing its vital role in mission success. Team Dog embodies that standard, offering science-based, customizable meal plans tailored to your dog's unique needs. Developed by a former Navy SEAL and K9 trainer, Team Dog Food ensures the highest quality nutrition for our K9 companions. Improve your dog's well-being. Be your dog's hero with Team Dog.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He's a former Marine Raider and Marine Corps water survival instructor, which I'm sure is probably the highlight of your career, right? Co-founder of Deep End Fitness and Operation Resilience, founder of Underwater Torpedo League, which I am really interested in that, given our underwater hockey game that we used to play in the SEAL teams all the time. Recipient of a Purple Heart Combat Action Ribbon, Bronze Star, and the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, author of Permission to Heal, Redefining Strength for Warriors, Athletes, and High Performers. It's going to be in the upcoming documentary Air Hunger. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Prime Hall.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, thanks for coming, man. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I saw you on Shawn's show and have wanted to meet you and talk to you ever since. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule with everything you have going on to come sit down with us. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the show, and we got a bunch of common, people in common, and friends and stuff. And I know Phil DeRue was probably the first contact that I think I went out to spend time with him right after you had been out there, and that was kind of like a couple years ago. Yeah. And then Dean Stott is one of our advisors for Deep End and Underwater Torpedo League as well. That's awesome. Cody Alford's a friend and served with him. Yeah. I just got to spend the morning with Clint Emerson. Yeah. So it's a lot. Which is
always a trip.
Yeah. Yeah. You got a lot of cool people in the network, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. Likewise. I guess it was a matter of time before we met and sat down, right? Right. What's the last book that you've read?
The last book, I'm in the Bhagavad Gita right now, so that's kind of the thing that I'm reading. It's a spiritual guidance book.
Oh, okay.
So, but then, and then the book that Permission to Heal is the book. It's actually releasing next Tuesday.
Oh, that's awesome.
But that thing's been we've been working on that for 4.5 years. Yeah. Me and Bethany Marshall, the ghostwriter, and my good friend that helped me with it. And so that's been a huge work. But I usually always have about 5 books going around my house,
It's interesting, a lot of people seem to answer that question that way. Like there's several books that they're in the middle of. For me, I can't read multiple books at a time. It's like I only have the attention span, of a fruit fly or something. Like I can only do one, or I start confusing which book said what and mixing them up. But I'm really looking forward to getting into the Permission to Heal book and the documentary Air Hunger that you have coming up, because I've had so many guests on the show over the years that have been through, whether it's ibogaine or psilocybin or the 5-MeO-DMT, ayahuasca, combination. Some have been through all of them, but it's such a fascinating protocol that has changed so many people's lives. And to me, what's really neat about it is kind of like a military career, is that the people's journeys through that they're all different. It's amazing, kind of the contrast between two guys with very similar experiences, military-wise or trauma-wise, or whatever issues that are kind of, I would say, contributing primarily to them going through that, can be very similar, but their experience with it is vastly different. So I'm really looking forward to getting into specifically your ayahuasca experience, because that's one that not many people on the show have had or talked about. From a, I guess, a morning routine standpoint, it's one of the questions I used to ask everybody, but now it just kind of depends on where they're at in life. For me, I'm curious, especially post journey through the healing process. Do you have a specific morning routine that you have to follow every morning?
Yes. I would say that my morning routine is definitely more locked in when I'm at home. I'm more grounded, and I feel like it's more, impactful, but I also do it when I'm traveling as well. So what it normally looks like is waking up, not having screens or any of that stuff, and basically starting my morning off as slowly as I can. And what that looks like is, like, perfect scenarios when I'm home. I have a gym downstairs in my garage, and so mobility is like a big thing for me now, because I've never had issues with feeling tight and tense all the time, but like now that I'm getting a little bit older, it's becoming more important. So first thing in the morning, I'll usually go and get the blood flowing in the gym, doing some mobility. Sometimes my wife's like a badass yogi.
Oh, nice.
So she'll take me in the backyard and do some hip mobility, because that really helps with my jiu-jitsu and other training. So that's a good way to start the morning, with some blood flow. And then basically I get quiet, or I get into a quiet place, and I, sometimes I'll pray, and sometimes I'll just get quiet and listen and tap in with myself and see, okay, with whatever schedule I have today, with whatever meetings, with whatever, media, with whatever opportunity that I have, what is my focus for today? Meaning, like, what's the one word I want to carry through the day? What's the one thing I want to focus on? Sometimes it's relationships, sometimes it's friendships, sometimes it's, be a good teammate or be a good partner or support. Sometimes it's like, impact. Sometimes it's pure potentiality. If I have like huge opportunities or meetings and it's like, I don't know what can come out of it, but I align like that. And then to make it simple, if you go on Amazon and you look up gratitude rocks or intentional stones, I know it sounds kind of silly because I never did anything like this before I did the healing work.
Yeah.
But now I do all kinds of stuff like this. So I'll go and basically I have like 60 stones on my desk with different words on them. And I pick an intention, or maybe 2 of them or 3 of them that stand out to me the most, and then I carry those
really
throughout. Yeah.
Dude, that's super cool. What do you remember all the stones that you have, like which ones they are, what they say on them?
Yeah, so I mean, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but like, there's focus, inspire, hope, love, friendship, gratitude, those are some of the ones that stand out. But
is that something where, like, throughout the day you'll like physically reach down, grab them, and like pull them out, read them, remind yourself of that? Like, if you find yourself in a moment where you're not kind of adhering to that, is it?
Absolutely. So it's basically, for me, it's like guardrails, like bumper rails for bowling.
Yeah.
That's what it does for me. It gives me a left and right lateral limit, and then it gives me a grounding point. So to your point, if I pick the inspire rock, right, and that's what I'm carrying around that day, well, and I check in with myself at lunchtime, and I can see, well, am I bringing this forward? Like, how is this showing up? How am I allowing it to show up? How am I showing up like this?
Yeah.
And so it's a good grounding and kind of check in.
The really cool, man. I've never heard that, but what a neat idea. I love it. Do you have a favorite quote?
The one that comes to mind is all it takes is all you got, which is a Marine Raider quote.
But what if what you've got is not enough? Then what?
It's inside of you. It's inside of you.
I'm
know
just
what
being
I mean?
a smart ass. Yeah. No, I mean, to me, it reminds me of, on the SEAL or the Buds compound, no easy day or the only easy day was yesterday. And I love those kind of simplistic, encompasses the entire swath of training in one, handful of words, type of sentence. But is that the one that's kind of repeated the most by instructors for you guys?
It's just one that is kind of memorialized a lot. Another one that I like is calm seas never made strong sailors. Because sometimes when you find yourself in a tough spot or in an obstacle or in a very challenging position, sometimes your mind wants to say, well, this sucks, or this whatever. And so a good reframe is like, hey, I want to be a strong sailor. Calm seas never made strong sailors. I'm in a little bit of choppy seas right now. That's okay. That's what I signed up for. Yeah. Right. So,
well, and I think the parallels even with that, like with raising kids especially, is huge. Are you a dad?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that there's such a fine line between coddling and abandoning. It seems like it. I mean, maybe that sounds ridiculous, but my kids are older and out of the house now, but especially when they're, in that kind of toddler to preteen window, it's like you want them to make mistakes. You want them to experience failure, adversity. But it's like how much is enough to build character and teach them that they need to work through things without, turning your back on them. On the same token, like I think most parents want to give their kids what they didn't have. And so I don't know about you, but I always found myself kind of struggling with, am I being too hard on them? Probably. I don't want them to be entitled little brats. I also don't want them to have, dad issues growing up because I was too hard on them and tried to put them through too much adversity. It's like, where do you draw that line? Do you find yourself struggling with that?
I haze my kids every chance I get in a good way though. I grew up in South Texas, and sometimes like for me to leave my house, ride my bike around the neighborhood, like people would try to steal my bike. Maybe I would have to fight, maybe I would almost have to fight, maybe I would get someone scare me or whatever. So there's always like there was friction points everywhere. My kids don't have that, so it's like I use every opportunity that I could find, because my son, for example, he doesn't get in trouble very much, right? But like when he did get in trouble last year, him and his friends kicked a door, or like they're ringing doorbells and running away, and one of the kids kicked the door, and there was a 80-year-old lady behind it, scared her, and so created a problem. And so I use it as an opportunity. My son, like, he went through basically a mini Buds course that night, because like he had to run 3 miles in the rain within an hour, and then he had to come back and do flutter kicks and stuff, with me spraying him with the hose for a couple hours, and then he had to pitch the tent and sleep outside. Yeah. And so it's like, and then at the end of all of that, and the next morning, I'm like, dude, like, what you did, right? And like, I can make this last for months, and I can ground you, and I can do all these things, or I can make you learn the lesson as quickly as possible and have you really, give you a lesson learned that you can carry with you and learn something from and add value to you, but in a short amount of time. Which one would you rather have? Yeah. He's like the short one. Yeah. So
how old is he?
13.
13. Yeah. That's a good age for stuff like that. Man, that's awesome. Speaking of your childhood, you mentioned you grew up in South Texas. Sounds like it was a rougher part of the state from the sounds of it. Can you kind of walk us through your childhood, generally speaking, siblings, sports that you played, any impactful moments, things like that?
Absolutely. So I grew up I was born in East Texas. When I was 2, my family moved to Corpus Christi, Texas. So I grew up on the mean streets of Corpus Christi, which is a little bit for anyone that's not from Texas, it's a little bit different than what most people expect Texas to be, with ranches and all that stuff. That's still, close by, and you can always access that. But Corpus was also known as North Padre Island, so it's right near the beach. We're on the water, so a big part of my childhood was in the water, either in the pool or in the ocean, and that's kind of where I found like a real love for the water, and it's stuck with me my whole life. But I spent a lot of time with my grandparents as a kid, and one of my grandmothers was a synchronized swimmer growing up, and so she would always have me at the pool since I was a young kid. So when I was and it's in the book Permission to Heal, but basically when I was like 2 years old, my grandmother started putting me in these like swimsuit competitions at the pool. And so I don't remember these, but I think that I had really positive memories of being at the pool when I was young, and then I just always wanted to be there. Yeah. And it became a refuge for me. When I was about 7 years old, I had a traumatic experience where I fell off. I used to climb up to the roof of my house, and one day I was climbing up, and my mom saw me climb up, and she said, "Hey, what are you doing? You're gonna fall." And then I was like climbing up, and I looked at her, and then right when she said that, I fell, and I landed on my skull. And so fractured my skull. I blacked out. They rushed me to the hospital. I was in and out of consciousness, and then that's when I had my first MRI machine. And it came back. I had no internal bleeding, thank God, but my whole skull was mush. So my skull was, it took a year or a year and a half to reform. And so, looking at framing, right, and the ability to frame things, because you could take anything that's happened to you in your life and you could put it in any frame that exists in the world, right? Or you could create a frame and make it. So it's like the framing of that for me was, at the time I felt like I was being, like it was happening to me and against me. And, I didn't like being separated and not being able to go to recess and not being able to play with my friends and being kind of put on the sidelines. But I think that it was a gift, because that's when I started to have internal dialogue a little bit, where I was thinking to myself about certain things. And then shortly after that, we moved into a new house when I was 8 years old, around when I was still recovering from this thing. When we moved into the new house, my room, on the outside of my window, it had a landscape around it. So it was like, someone could come and stand in there. You wouldn't see them if you drove by, because they're covered with all the plants. And there was no security lights or anything on the outside of the house. So I ended up having a Peeping Tom or somebody that came to my window and then just never left, stayed there for years. And so I ended up dealing with this guy till right before my parents divorced and moved out. So it was about 5 years of having this boogeyman, kind of in my window. And what would happen when it first started happening, I would get very scared, and then I would notify my parents, and then they would turn the lights on in the house, and then we would go outside. The guy would be gone. It happened over and over again, to where I think that he just knew, like, it's an early warning signal. All the lights come on, there's and then we come out, he's gone. So my dad didn't believe me, and so my parents didn't believe me for years. So I ended up having to navigate this thing by myself. And the way that I did it was I lived in my closet, and I would sleep in there. And then when the night time would hit, I would basically use the light contrast to hide from him and basically be anywhere that he couldn't see me when I was moving. So if I had to go around the perimeter of a room and then hide under the window and then crawl underneath a bed or whatever it was, I'd literally move anywhere and anything so that I wouldn't be seen through the window from this guy.
Dude, that went on for 5 years?
Yeah.
And your parents didn't believe you the entire time?
No.
Man, that's got to be just brutal for a kid to go through that. I mean, like, I imagine you feel like you're going crazy almost, or not being believed by your parents and being scared to death by something is there, and Did they ever end up catching the guy?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they caught him like when I was about 12 or 13.
What happened? Or how did he get caught?
So, for those years in between that, I was sleeping in my closet, and my closet backed up to my parents' room. So whenever he would be breathing on the window or tapping or doing stuff that was just like driving me insane, sometimes I would bang on the closet so that it would wake my parents up, and then they would come out, and then my dad would pull his gun, and then we would go outside, and it would just for years, and never anyone would be out there. So finally one night I was asleep, my parents heard a disturbance, and my dad caught him outside.
Wow.
Didn't turn the lights on, went outside, caught him. He ran off to the park. He had his vehicle waiting for him there, so he got out, got away. Dude's like in his underwear. So my parents notified me that the next morning at breakfast, hey, we caught him. And then my parents got a divorce a couple months later. We ended up moving out of the house. My mom and sister moved away, and then I moved in with my dad. We moved into a condo. But that was kind of just, hey, we caught him, it's all good. But the last couple months of living there, I didn't experience him much or really at all from what I remember. Ever since they cut off all the landscape outside of my window, and they put a security light outside. So after that, it was last couple months were pretty peaceful, and then we moved out of there.
So they didn't actually catch him.
No.
Your dad just saw him and he ran off.
Right.
Man, that's too bad.
Yeah, confirmed it.
Yeah, I was hoping that your dad tackled him and
Yeah.
gave him some street justice for a few days. Man, that's terrifying. Was that something that, like after the fact, that continued to haunt you or that caused problems kind of psychologically for the rest of your childhood?
For anyone that remembers caller ID, when caller ID first came out and you had it at your house, that was the time that this was going on. It was when caller ID came out. So I think a big way that it carried through my childhood, especially when I was in Corpus Christi, was I never knew if he was following me or not, right? Because he knows where I live. So when I'm out on my bicycle and I have a random car that's following me and it turns with me and it turns with me again, like I would like be doing crazy stuff to evade and ditch my bike, jump a fence, because I was always, concerned that this guy could be one of the vehicles that's following me around, or could be anybody. And then whenever I would get calls from the caller ID and it'd be an unknown number and there's someone breathing on the phone, well, it would freak me out, because I would, first thing I would think of is it this guy?
Wow.
So it had a psychological effect. And then when my parents divorced, it was right when I finished 8th grade. So my dad and I moved into a condo, and then my dad moved in with his girlfriend, so I ended up living by myself. When I lived by myself in the condo, it's like any noise that happened at night would freak me out.
So as a 13-year-old, you're living alone in a condo?
As a freshman and sophomore in high school, I lived by myself in a condo.
Can I ask what your dad was thinking doing that?
I think he just didn't have the tools at the time, and there was so much that he was trying to figure out in his own journey that was just the way that it shook out. Now on the other side, I will say that I was very street smart as a kid and very able to adapt and do certain things that were kind of above my pay grade in certain ways, and it was all because of my grandparents. So my grandparents are kind of like my parents, where they took me under their wing when I was young. But since I was like very little, they took me on one vacation every summer, right? And at first it would be like, just take us to San Antonio, and we'd go to SeaWorld, and then we'd go to the Riverwalk, and then, picked up and they'd take us to Mexico, and we'd learn about the Mexican culture. And, my grandparents did a lot of work in Mexico and with their construction business and architecture and stuff like that. So they were showing us the culture. And then They would take us to Vegas and New York City and all these different places to show all the 5 boroughs and all the culture of different things, and like basically to support us and make us more cultured and street smart and all this stuff. But since I was, maybe 9 or 10 years old, they started giving me little assignments when they would take me on these trips. And an example would be, going to Fiesta, Texas, or Disney World or Disneyland or something. And they said, hey, here's where we're going to meet. You have 3 hours, right? Your job is to ride as many rides as possible, right? So I want you to find ways for you to get to the front of the line.
Wow.
And so I'd be like, what do you mean? And then they would task me with that. And then I would be there and I would start to find these. And so I would go to like the most popular ride and I would say, hey, I need to find my grandparents there at the front. And then it would get me all the way to the front and I'd ride the ride and then I'd go to the next ride, So I would find ways, and they were training me and kind of tasking me at the time. I didn't realize it. And then by the time I was 12 and 13, we were going to Mexico. I mean, we would go to San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, and there's a place called Mamma Mia's. It's a restaurant, but it's also a bar and a club at night. So we'd go to dinner there, and my grandparents would say, hey, here's, X amount of money. Be home by 12:30 or 1 o'clock, have fun, stay with these guys, whatever, and then just make sure you're back. And so I would be able to party like an adult when I was 13 years old or even younger, And I was also 2 years ahead of my grade. Of most kids in my grade, I was ahead because I had an August birthday. So I was already a year ahead, and then I was a year ahead of that. So I was super young. And so from the sports side, you asked me about sports. Like I didn't hit puberty for a couple years. I was behind everybody in my grade.
Like a junior in high school.
A senior.
Oh, wow.
So I started my senior year at 16 years old.
Wow.
Turned 17. So, interesting. Growing up, I kind of liked tackle football when I was in 4th and 5th grade. And then in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, everyone hits puberty, and I was like, this isn't fun for me anymore. So I kind of flipped to soccer. I really wasn't into sports much. Once my parents divorced and everything, it was more so survival. But I think everything, looking back on it, was a big gift because being by myself in the apartment, my grandparents came one summer to take us on vacation. They saw that I was living by myself and they were just floored. And so, and that trip, we went to San Antonio for a week for vacation. And when we were there, there was a group of kids in the mall from Texas Military Institute, which is a military school in San Antonio. And I said, these kids, they were moving around in a pack, and they looked like they had camaraderie. They were all buddy. They were having a good time, and they're all in their uniform. So I showed my grandparents. I said, I wish I could do something like that. And so they went back and they got me on a tour to the Marine Military Academy in South Texas in Harlingen.
Oh, wow.
And legit military campus and school. And so I went on a tour there, and they're telling me I'm going to have a roof over my head. I have security. I get 3 meals a day. I get, trainer, all these different things, and I'm all in. Whereas most 99% of everybody I was at military school with were there kicking and screaming against their will.
Yeah, I didn't want to be there at
all.
No. Yeah.
And for me, it was the exact opposite.
Wow.
Because for kids, like some people used to think it was cool in high school when they found out that I lived by myself. They think it's like Home Alone. And sometimes it is like that where it's kind of cool. But 99.9% of it wasn't. Yeah. And it was like I just wanted rules. I wanted stability. I wanted security, all those things. So when I went to military school, for example, and I'm in this like almost maximum security school for kids, it's kind of prison rules. However, for me, it was like that the Peeping Tom and those guys and any of the weird stuff that I can't control when I'm out of here, I can control it here because nothing can come onto campus because it's fully secured.
Yeah.
So there's always a roving, police or security there. Nobody's coming on to mess with you. You know, you just got to deal with whatever friction you have there, but nothing from outside can catch. So for me, it was, I felt like I could sleep. I felt like I could eat. I felt like I had friends, and the frictions that I had from school were actually just kind of fun because I had those frictions. Like, my friends that I grew up with in Corpus Christi, they would fight all the time. So sometimes I'd show up to my buddy's house and they're like, hey, you got to fight so-and-so in the grass before you come inside. And it was like, that was just
part of it.
And then I'm dealing with stuff at home. So for me, going to military school, you got to fight someone, because people get stressed out and someone will kick your backpack on your way to class. Well, if anyone saw that happen, you gotta respond, because if they see that someone can kick your backpack without you doing anything, now you're a soft target. Now everybody's going to be kicking your backpack.
Yeah. It's like full on prison rules.
Exactly. So someone kicks your backpack, literally it's like your backpack's on fire. You can't get it off fast enough to deal with the situation.
Yeah. Wow. What a tumultuous childhood it sounds like. I am curious on a couple things within the family dynamic. One, what's the backstory on your grandparents? Like what did your grandparents do to handle you that way? I mean, that's a pretty obscure tactic to have your grandkids, like, giving them tasks almost like you're training them at the CIA farm or something,
grandparents are special. I think sometimes because they had kids, they had 4 kids, and maybe there were some things that they missed out with their kids because they were so wrapped into work that they had more room for the grandkids to have more relationship in certain ways. But to kind of complete that thought, my grandfather, since I was about 13 years old, I would spend at least a month every summer working construction with him down on the border, and he would task me out with the hardest jobs, and he would act like it was no big deal. So he would, for example, he would leave me on the side of a cliff or on the side of a back of someone's property where we were building a receding wall, and he would drop off a trailer with 10,000 pounds of concrete, and he would have me and one other worker break that down, put it on one wheelbarrow with a flat tire, and wheel it over one day, clear the whole trailer, and drop it off the side of this retaining wall. And it's like, with the heat index, it's like 115 degrees. Yeah. You're getting dropped off with like a cooler, an igloo of ice water, and you're there all day. And you gotta find it within yourself to just do it. Yeah. Not quit. Quitting's not an option. It's not even in the vocabulary. It's just, here's the work for today. We'll pick you up at this time. And so my grandfather just gave me the hardest jobs, to where, even when I went into the grunts in the Marines, and we do a lot of different grunt labor being in the infantry, it's like none of that felt like it was even scratching the surface for what my grandfather made me do growing up. Wow. And so I think that he really ingrained hard work. And also, I don't know, my grandfather has something special, and my grandmother too. But my grandfather, I can remember, being a young kid working construction with him and accidentally slamming the tailgate, or like slamming the camper thing on his hand. And literally the dude wouldn't flinch. And it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't. And he's like, no, don't worry. It's like, it just slammed. Like, there's got to be something fractured in your hand or something. And he's just like, no, it's okay. I saw him break his arm one time, and it was just like, no, don't, it's okay. Don't,
Was he a World War II era guy?
Yeah, but he wasn't in the war. So he was he did a couple years in the Air Force, and then worked construction. Yeah. Wow. Ran a construction company, and really built generational wealth for like his whole family with everything that he did.
It sounds like he was, as they say, hard as woodpecker lips, right?
Exactly.
Man, what a cool guy it sounds like. From your parents' standpoint, was them getting divorced and splitting up and kind of the dynamic shift, was that a detrimental event in your childhood to where it impacted you really, really negatively? And was it bad leading up to that? Like, were your parents fighting all the time, or was it, tumultuous that way?
There was a lot of pressure at the house. I think the Peeping Tom didn't help. For years there was, elephants in the room and things that weren't dealt with. And so to me, it was a gift looking back on it. One, for them, but especially for me, because it put me in these positions, which, it sounds challenging. I could not, my son is 13 now. I could not imagine him in the situations that I was in, and I wouldn't want to. But it was all, there's no coincidences. And going back to the framing, I think that all of those situations, and then going to military school. Well, it was a Marine military academy. So that's the only way that I don't have Marines in my family, besides one great uncle. And so I didn't have the influence to go into the Marines besides military school. So everything that's happened to me, it's all been a breakthrough, or a point that came from whatever that situation was, living by myself.
Yeah. Wow. Before we get into kind of the catalyst, it sounds like going to military school is probably it, but before we get into the military career aspect, is there a story behind your first name?
My dad has it in his name. I have two uncles that have Prime, so it's just been in the family. And my whole life, people have said, "Oh, like Optimus Prime," from Transformers, and now they say like Amazon Prime. So
that's kind of a degrade, right?
Yeah, but the thing is I don't care, because most of the time when I say my name, people don't have it positioned in their brain. So they'll say, "Oh, nice to meet you, Brian." Yeah. and sometimes I won't even correct them.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
that's wild. Is it safe to ascertain that the catalyst to join the military was going through military school and you wanted to continue that, or was there something else?
It was huge. It was military school. Military school is a huge in-doc for me. I had teachers in military school that were Force Recon Marines, and they played different videos. I still remember to this day in class, in like a leadership class, for example, and we've got videos just on repeat in the classroom, which most classes you don't get to watch videos, so that's already a hookup. But the videos would be, cami paint, jungle training, Force Recon, jumping out of planes, all these different things, to where it's like, oh, that's badass, right? You want to play Army men when you're kids, right? Which is what I did, right? I played Army men even with the Peeping Tom. But it's like, this is real life. These guys are legit. And that's kind of what planted the seed to do that. But I got to a point after military school, because military school was actually a lot of fun. And I had, people that were from Mexico that were cartel affiliated and cartel families that were my roommates and my friends. And so we had a lot of fun outside of, I would go to Mexico with them. We'd have crazy experiences and all this stuff. And so it also led me into having extracurricular activities where I was into some criminal stuff at a young age. And when I got out, I was at South Padre Island, which is a spring break spot, one of the top destinations in the U.S. year to year, very seasonal, and there's a lot of crime there. And that was what I was doing when I got out of high school for a year or so. I had no purpose. I was miserable. And my grandfather, at one point, I told him, like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, And I had stayed up all night waiting for him to come to his truck and go to work the next morning. And I was waiting for him. And I told him, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he was like, it's okay. You remember when you did so good at military school? what if I just take you to the Marine recruiters and we look at that? And so that's kind of how, through him. And I always wanted to make my grandparents proud, and like ever since I've been out, it's been almost 9 years now. I've gotten to work with so many different athletes and from every sport, to include world champions, teams, all that stuff. And one of the patterns I've seen is that if someone has a strong why, that will get them through a burning building, right? If they have a strong enough why, which if they have a weak why, they won't get through that building, And so that was one of the things for me getting to the Marine Corps. It was almost a get out of jail free card for me because I was in significant trouble. My grandfather got me out with at least 2 judges. And so for me, it was like, okay, well, I get out of jail free. I go to the Marine Corps, but I get to make my grandparents proud because that's all I wanted to do anyway.
Yeah. What kind of trouble were you in? I mean, what were you doing illegal activity wise? Can you shed any light on that?
Yeah. So, I did some security work at some clubs. And so I may or may not have had, identification from other people that wasn't mine that I got caught with, and, things like that. Drugs, getting robbing people, going through the whole thing. And really it was survival mode, no purpose, no direction, no why, no alignment, so,
yeah.
So, and the Marine Corps really didn't give me that immediately either, but I went into the Marine Corps and it was kind of like, I wasn't one of the guys that saw the towers fall that said, sign me up. I was one of the guys that saw that and then got into significant trouble. And then my grandfather said, well, why don't we do this? And it was like, okay, well, that's my, get out of jail free card, but it's also like my get out of South Texas card too.
Right.
Because I needed a reset. Needed to get away, and I needed an incubator program to grow. It's like the law of accommodation is a training principle, but it's like once you've been somewhere your whole life, if you want exponential growth, you need to leave there and go to somewhere else, or put yourself into out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, you got to change the environment for sure. Relationship wise with both your mom and your dad, since they were separated and living in different locations, how did that change or progress throughout high school and then ultimately into the military? Like, did you have a relationship with them, or was it pretty spotty?
Yes, I did. It was spotty at times. Sometimes it was non-existent. The military, though, was always, before deployments, you're sometimes doing a will and preparing all of your life that if you don't come back from deployment, so I think being in that mindset, I was always, it created more of a relationship with them at the time. But when I got out, I had significant challenges with the relationship. We have a great relationship now for the most part, like I say great, but it was no relationship for a little while. So I think that we're all on kind of a healing track and doing what we can to I don't think it's healthy for anybody to have fractures in their family tree if you can help it.
Right.
Some relationships, they get fractured and there's no putting it back. But if you can fix a fracture, that's one of the things that I saw in my first healing was like, take your family tree first and look at any fractures and start mending those and healing those. Look at like Miyagi with the bonsai tree, right? Start fixing those things.
That's a great perspective. All right, so getting into the military, can you walk us through your military career, progressing into ultimately, Marine Raider school and subsequent deployments?
Absolutely. Looking at my military or thinking about it, it feels like I'm Mr. Magoo. Because it's just like, I got in trouble, my grandfather recommended it, now I go into the Marines. The Marines, when I went in, there's no special operations unit, there's no Marine Raiders that existed yet. I went in 2005, peak of the Iraq War, which to my recruiters, how do I say this? thankfully for my recruiter, because initially when I went in and I went to San Antonio to MEPS and they did the FBI fingerprint scan and all my stuff popped, they basically said there's no chance we can get you in under any circumstance.
Oh, wow.
And then they called me back after a couple months and said, hey, we can get you in, but it's going to be a waivered process and you're going to have to come in and do documentation on every single incident that you have. It's going to take time, but we believe we can get it done if you work with us. That was the only way. It's the peak of the Iraq war.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't go in with like multiple drug charges and all these other things,
Unless
and get to go into the, so at this day and age, even if you have one of those things, it's hard to get in,
right,
or not possible. So I think it was just right time, right place. And, I was a dumpster fire. And so, and I don't know that I've ever publicly said it, but for anybody, if there's anybody that knew me back then that's listening, and I owe you an apology for the way that I showed up. I really mean that. I didn't mean to show up like that. It was really a product of my environment and the things that I had experienced as a kid that drove me to act like that. And I was really just in survival mode, and I didn't have the maturity or the emotion or like the ability to even express myself to explain to people what I was really dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a, I guess, ultimately a fortuitous path, though, and that, to be where you're at now, I don't think you'd be where you're at had all of those things not taken place. All right, so you kind of get in by the skin of your teeth, given the the height of the Iraq War and the need for more Marines. What was the first few years like, and how did that lead into ultimately the special operations capacity?
The first few years were super kinetic, but more not in like a overseas war kinetic. It was in just me in trouble all the time kinetic. And I had a serious authority issue coming from my experience growing up, lack of authority. And then from being at military school, if you can imagine, like, yeah, it's Marine based. You're doing all the same stuff. You're marching, you're, in uniforms, you're doing all that stuff. However, if someone yells in your face, they better be ready for you, because you can fight at any time, any rank. If there's any disrespect or there's anything student to student, you can drop your stuff and fight, right? Or if we can't fight here, then when we get back to the barracks at night after class and after our activities in the afternoon, we're going to clear one of the racks out of the rooms so that you can fight in there, and we're all going to hold court.
So that's something you did a lot?
Yeah. So, but my point with it is that it was hard for me to go to the real Marine Corps and for it to feel like it was WWE to me, where they yell in your face, da 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 da. But it's like, hey, you kind of crossed the line, you disrespected, so now we need to hash it out as men. And there was none of that. It was a lot of hiding behind rank. Mm-hmm. Whereas at military school, it's like, the captain or the guy that's in charge, he'll fight you if it's warranted. Yeah. And so for me, it was like, I called it theater arts, but I was like, almost like my mind was blown, because there's no hands being thrown. It's just yelling and spitting in your face and da 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 da. And it's like, okay, well, and then when it comes to a point where you're like, hey, we need to solve this, or we need to settle this, even if your rank's higher, we need to figure this out, that they're like, nah, that's not how we do it. Right. So that was a challenge for me. And then that also, like, my first, I went through boot camp, I went through infantry school. And then right when I got to my unit, I got put into sniper tryout. Literally the first day I was at my unit, because the whole infantry platoon that I got put into, they had just got back from Iraq, and they had like 3 spots for snipers, and nobody wanted to go.
Really?
So because they all wanted to stay together because they just got back from Iraq. They're all tight. And so they're like, send the new guys, right? So I was one of the new guys that on paper I met the criteria. So I went into a sniper in-doc and training. So the sniper indoc in training was several months. And then after we passed, we were in sniper platoon. Well, you know, for anyone that's been in a sniper platoon, it's a lot of hazing and like basically testing your gangster, you know, hey, you know, I know that you thought you were getting off work now, but guess what? You're going to run the hill for 3 hours, you know, those kind of things to test you and see if you can handle it. Sometimes it would go too far. And so my stepmom got killed in a car crash.
Oh, man.
Right after we passed the indoc and we were in snipers. And so I got a Red Cross letter, and then I got notified by my chain of command that, hey, you're going home to the funeral, and so you need to pack your stuff, get a plane ticket, do all this stuff. The next day when they were going to take me to the airport and they had me come up to the office, you know, the headquarters building, with my stuff, you know, that I'm flying back with, like my luggage and all that stuff and my itinerary and my orders or whatever it was. And so I go and I'm like, you know, my family's distraught back here. So I'm, you know, coming back to kind of support my family and close out with my stepmom, because I didn't have the greatest relationship with her. So I felt like I needed to come back for some type of closure. But anyway, so I got there and I went into this in detail on the Shawn Ryan show, but essentially what happened when I got to the headquarters building was they pretended like I was going to the airport, and they said, hey, wait a second, you need to check in with the commander. So they had me report in, you know, a private young Marine, doesn't know anything. And they're like, hey, you know, these things happen. It's really, you know, it's challenging, but right now we can't lose you for training. So what I need you to do is go put your uniform on, and we're going out on a stalk this afternoon, right? So I went, I put my ghillie suit on and all this stuff. Well, first off, like part of me died right there when they played that game. And then like even like it within the next couple hours, I felt like it was me against everybody.
Do you know why they did that? Why they went through the fake, we're going to send you home, and then not do it?
So it goes back to the hazing thing and like, hey, you know, it's always testing you and always like pushing you past your limits and always mind effing you to do something, right? And so it's just for this, it was taken too far, and our whole unit was gone in Hawaii during that time. So it was only the sniper unit back at Camp Pendleton in California where we were at. And so they were kind of the leadership of they weren't being held accountable by the unit because they were gone. So they were kind of playing God in their own way, and they made that decision to do that. And obviously now me as a young Marine, I didn't have the tools emotionally or, you know, mentally or emotionally, to do anything. So I just suffered in silence. I took it, and I basically, you know, felt like I was against everybody. I didn't want to be there anymore. And I didn't have any respect for anybody around me, you know, even like the guys that were my peers that went along with it or that didn't, you know what I mean? I was against everybody. And so I wanted to, you know, destroy all the sniper rifles. I didn't care about anything. So that behavioral issues led to me getting sent back to the infantry. So when I got back to the infantry platoon, I was still having I was having more authority issues now because of this thing that happened, right? I wanted revenge, but I had no way of doing it. So the way that I did it was I would just go get hammered, and then I would basically, Dr. Jekyll would go away and Mr. Hyde would come out, and then I would do these, you know, crazy things when I was blacked out as an outlet. But then I would wake up the next day and people would be like, you know, dude, you're losing all your rank. Like, you messed up bad last night. Like, you know, you went after a staff sergeant, you're a private. That happened twice, you know. So I lost all my ranks. So my first 3 years, I was a private 3 times. I had no rank. And I really feel, in all seriousness, I know it's funny, you know, saying that, I feel like that was such a gift, because I learned over and over again that you don't need rank on your collar to work with other people. You don't need it for respect. You don't need it for anything. You can earn all of it without it. And it's also better to earn it without it. If I'm just standing behind my rank and I'm pointing and having people do everything, which I've seen people that do that, and they could do it for 20 plus years, and then they get out and they're so lost because it's like the world. How does it work?
Yeah,
it's
it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't work like that, bro. And so, even though I lost money, I really didn't get paid much, and I had all the issues, and I was on restriction the whole time, and all this stuff. It was such a gift. Because like even now, anytime that I work with any company or whatever it is and I have a title, it's almost like I look at that like the rank. And one of my favorite things about Raider training was they said, for all of ITC, which is 10 months or more, there's no rank. You got to earn all of your, earn respect and selection, no rank. So it's like you got to earn respect without your rank in these scenarios. And it's more of a merit-based environment. So for me, that was a huge breakthrough. So I had whatever issues I had with the regular Marine Corps, when I got to Raiders, a lot of them got solved, where it was like, I'm tired of people that are just talkers all the time. They just talk and talk and talk. And it's even like at selection, for example, people are talking and telling you, hey, I know most of you guys aren't really meant to be here, but I am, because my grandfather was a World War II Raider. So the leadership already told me that I'm going to pass. It's like, bro, we haven't even started the first exercise yet. Yeah. And then all of a sudden that guy drops on the first day. Wow. It's like, stop talking, guys. But for me, I loved it because, when I was in Iraq, especially before I went to Iraq, which was my second deployment, I got a selection date for when I got back. So the whole time I was there, I knew that I was going. And so it basically was like, man, by the time I left Iraq, I would have done anything to be in a better unit. Yeah. Like I would have walked through fire and glass, anything, and I would do anything to never, ever go back. And that was a motivation and kind of a driver for me for Raiders, which was great.
Yeah. With that Iraq deployment, that was what, 07-ish?
07 was... No, so 07 was end of 06. 07 was, I was on the 31st MU, which is a Pacific. So you're in Okinawa. We went to South Korea. We went to Australia. We went to the Philippines. But we got extended for 6 months. So instead of being there for 6 months, we're there for a year. Yeah. Came back, and then I went to Iraq in like end of 2008.
Yeah. How was the op tempo then? I mean, things were pretty wound down by then, or was it still pretty busy?
No, it was wound down. It was actually very weird in a lot of ways. At least it felt strange because there was still combat operations going on. There's still IEDs in the ground. At that point, RKG-3s were a big threat. So like the shape charges that people throw over the wall and then they punch through the vehicles. So we were having those and stuff, but at the same time, we were turning over bases to the Iraqis. We were, taking prisoners that had been captured and turning them in, doing like whatever it was. It was like a lot of logistical stuff, but it was very sometimes uncertain because it's like, okay, if we control this base, and today we're giving it over to the Iraqis. Well, there's like a couple hours of that are very, like, securities. Yeah. There's a lot of gray area. In Iraq, there's a saying or a phrase or framework, 3-block war. So you got to be ready for, you go to one block and it's full on, warfare and shots being fired and murder holes and all this stuff. You go to the next block and it's, quiet. It's a ghost town. You don't know what's up. You got to feel it out. And then you go to the next one and it's Marines handing out water and food to kids and, people on the street. So the thing is, you got to be ready for every environment at every new block that you get to. Wow. So, but it was, I didn't have the Iraq deployment that most of the Marines that I know had and all of that. For me, it was a training. It felt like a big training deployment. I remember we got shot at from the Syrian border. We weren't allowed to shoot back. And that was the first thing I was like, what? And it was like, oh no, would that be an international incident? So we can't do that. So it's like, so you're going to bring me out here, you're going to shoot at me, and then you're going to like, all right, that's cool. And then oh yeah, well, here's the ROE for that. If you get shot at, then you need to go get the Iraqi police, right? You need to go. So we would go, and this would happen where we would go.
Here's something I don't talk about enough, which is how much sleep actually affects everything else. Training, focus, mood, recovery. When your sleep is off, all of it is off. I used to wake up with my back tight, neck stiff, feeling like I hadn't really rested. Helix sent me one of their mattresses, and I have to tell you, it made a real difference. I'm waking up feeling recovered in a way I just wasn't before. Less of that grinding morning soreness. Better mornings lead to better days. It's really that simple. What works about Helix is that it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. They've got over 20 mattress models, so you can actually find what's right for you and how you sleep. Whether you run hot, deal with back issues, or you just haven't slept well in years and you're not even sure why. They've got cooling upgrades that matter heading back into the back half of summer. Free shipping right to your door, 120-night sleep trial, a limited lifetime warranty, and the Happy with Helix guarantee makes the whole thing completely risk-free. Helix is the most awarded mattress brand out there, and it shows. Go to helixsleep.com/micdrop for 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/micdrop for 20% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/micdrop.
Okay, we get contact. We go get the Iraqi police. They're in on it. So then you're like, hey, we got to go back and get the bad guys. We got to go this way. They're like, all right, let's go. And they go, right. They go this way. Because it's just like kangaroo, business. Man. So
that's got to be frustrating.
It's a wake up call though. You know, I had wake up calls in Afghanistan where I'm like, I felt like a rat in a maze because they're tracking on satellite and stuff and having us do stuff. Yeah. But
well, it makes you realize that the people running the show are in Washington D.C. and they have a bunch of ulterior motives that none of us are privy to.
Right.
In between that Iraq deployment and going through the MARSOC stuff, you did the water survival gig, and like I mentioned in the intro, like the water survival stuff, and maybe that came across as me being a smart aleck, but I was genuine in that I know the water survival stuff for us was like it's basically hazing the students in the water with their clothes on, and it's like you can tell the instructors are having about the best time of their life, drowning students over and over and over. I assume that it's a parallel in the Marine Corps for water survival stuff. How did you get into that position, and what did you take from it?
So I got into water survival instructor. One, I was going into Raiders, and it was new, so there weren't, like they have BUDS trainers or they have these people outside or even Force Recon. Force Recon been around for a long time. So there was a lot of data and knowledge and wisdom out there from people that, hey, if I want to train for recon, what do I need to do? X, Y, and Z. So for Raiders, there wasn't a lot of that at that point. But what everyone did say is you need to get really good in the pool because that's where everyone quits because they get overwhelmed. So for me, I was good in the water, but I needed the technical aspect of it. So when I went to water survival instructor course, to your point, it was 3 weeks long, but I had just done at that point, there was another course that they don't have anymore called Combat Water Safety Swimmer. That was basically like water survival instructor course with nobody watching them do it. So it was hard. Yeah. But for those, you have really long time swims, you have gear swims, and then you have rescues in full gear. Yeah. So you have a flak jacket, you have a vest on, you have a helmet, you have camis, you have boots, and you're in the deep end. Like it can feel like you're drowning because you're spending so much time in the water that you don't even want to shower. Yeah. I remember the last thing we did at the McQuist course, which is the water survival course, is we did a 3,600 meter strip swim with full gear. So you start off with full gear, including a rifle on you, and you swim 600 meters. And then you take the rifle off, you swim 600. And then you take the helmet off, you swim 600. Then you take the boots off, 600. Then you take the blouse off. Then you take the camis off. Though then at the end, you just have your shorts and you swim the last 600, right? Except for us, it was in Coronado. It was during a hailstorm. It was at Miramar, Camp Miramar in San Diego. Mm-hmm. And it was hailing, and the instructors, a lot of them are the instructor trainers, and they're all from the depot, so they're all drill instructors. And so they love to like mess, they want everyone to quit. That's like drill instructor kind of come from. So they put in the hailstorm, they put "just quit" in rifles. They took the rubber rifles and they spelled out "just quit" in the deep end. And so you're crawling, doing 3,600 meters. You're trying to go fast, but you can't go fast at all with all the gear on, and it's hailing on you. And then every time you come to the deep end, you see that. And so it's just like, and then we were seeing people get out of the pool. And if people get out of the pool, that means they have to start back at zero. Like they're,
oh, man.
And so it was like, we were seeing people after a couple hours get out. And it was like, oh no, so all those things. So I still have flashbacks of like, if I'm doing any training and it starts hailing, that's an immediate thing that I go to. Yeah. But the biggest thing for water survival was not going through the course. It was being an instructor. So if anyone's ever been an instructor in the military, it's like that's kind of where you self-actuate. That's where you kind of come to life. That's where you put everything together. You get the vocabulary. Things click on a higher level because you're not just absorbing it, but you're also teaching it back. And so when I first, so after water survival instructor course, I got posted at a pool. It was only supposed to be for like a month or two before I went to Raider training, but it ended up being a year because I got put in the next Raider class instead of the one that I was expecting. So I got a year to train, but the bigger part was got a year to train people in the pool. And at the pool, I had, it was the most active pool in Camp Pendleton, but we had thousands and thousands and thousands of Marines that came that year to train, to do certain certifications. So we had a 30-foot high tower that we had to get people to jump off of safely. And then we had a 15-foot deep end, Olympic-sized pool, all that stuff. So Marines that were very scared of the water, I had to get them through their certifications to get checked off to go on deployment or whatever it is. Sometimes they didn't have the faith in themselves or the belief or the possibility that they could do it. And I had to find the way to coach them to get them through it. Because I never wanted to sign someone out unqualified. An UNC is what we call it. You never want to do that as an instructor. You always want to find a way. A really good instructor can always find a way to get someone at least the minimum requirements, right? So that they can get checked off. And then the high tower was another one. So falling off the roof when I was 7 and fracturing my skull, I was deathly afraid of heights. So for me, it was a big deal because I had to conquer the high tower myself. And to work at the pool, we had to do this thing where we had to run off the high tower at 30 feet and jump and hit touch a rail that's in the middle of the pool, like out there. So I had to run as fast as I could and jump off this thing. It took me like 2 days to be able to do that. And then just get comfortable jumping off at a moment's notice. Boom, go. Boom, go. And so that was good for me. But the bigger part was, from an outward focus and a coaching perspective and an instructor was, as a young Marine, I had some high-ranking Marines that came through that were deathly afraid of heights, that had been avoiding the high tower their whole career maybe. And maybe they got up there and they grabbed onto the railing at the last minute. Well, if you grab onto the railing, that means you can fall and hit your head on the concrete and die, or split your head open. So if I see that, or if any instructor up there sees it, you got to launch them. You got to throw them off. And so I had a couple people that I launched or threw off that were higher ranking that I almost got in trouble because they took offense to it. I was only doing it for their own safety. But what I took from that was like, I can't just use force. I need to find the words and be able to coach someone and be able to get them. So that's when I started having aha moments where I was like, okay, well, I found that if I can get someone to focus on something external outside of their own head, so like on the top of the high tower, it's like focus on the horizon, relax, cross your arms, take a full 30-inch step, boom. If I could get someone that can't go underwater and I could take, that's why we use the torpedoes. I take this thing, don't worry about swimming, don't worry about going, just look at this thing. See this thing, it flies like a fish underwater. Just pass this with me a couple times. Boom, 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 pass, get them to relax. Once they can get off the wall, follow me. And just boom, 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 and then we get to the other side. The other part is military water survival was created after World War II from people that accidentally fell off ships. So they found that these people that fell off, some of them couldn't even swim, technically, and they floated, and they found ways to turn themselves into a flotation device for days at a time. They survived. So that's when they brought them back. They debriefed them. That's what created the military water survival program. So why that's important is that if you can't swim or you're not low in water confidence, if we put you in front of us and we run through the military water survival principles, we can teach you what your buoyancy is real quick, and then we can show you how to work with that buoyancy and maybe even counter it. If you're sinking, we can show you how to float. Yeah. You can teach that. And then once you can teach that survivability, well, now we can start crawl, walk, run. We'll start to build water confidence, and then the beauty of water confidence is it translates to confidence in all areas of life. So if you start unlocking and becoming a shark in the water, it's going to translate all these other places. And that's why I love doing that work. And it creates a ripple effect for people in their life.
Man, that's good stuff. It is amazing the confidence carryover with something like that. If you're deathly afraid, and again, it goes back to, it reminds me of even raising kids, is that if they're scared of something, working them through that and not just allowing them to back out, that builds their confidence, which, translates to every other aspect, which is great. I find the same thing in jiu-jitsu. You mentioned that you train. I find a lot of parallels with that too, is that, that helps change your kind of outward confidence in ways that, at least for me, I was not expecting,
Absolutely.
All right. So you get to spend an extra year doing that, which, translates to building skill sets, getting in even better shape. Then ultimately you go to the Marine Raider training, and there's no rank, so that's a huge kind of benefit for you. Was there anything that surprised you about it from kind of a selection standpoint? You knew a fair bit about it, kind of had some idea of what to expect. Did anything surprise you, or what was the selection like for you?
I thought that selection surprised me. The biggest surprise was that I just loved it. Like, I loved the big boy rules. I loved, like, no one's telling you anything. You're not allowed to talk, really, but all your instructions, you just get them from the whiteboard. There's no back and forth. All the instructors are neutral if you ever are to ask them anything, but there's no real reason to ask them anything. You just go through the flow. You don't need to talk. And I'm very introverted, so I like being quiet. I like turning the talking off, and I liked the big boy rules. And I always, a lot of my frustrations with how micromanaged a lot of the Marine Corps was to that point, this was like a breakthrough for all of that.
Yeah.
Oh, and like the silly things, like we always wear boot bands in the Marines, where you have this band that you have to put on your pants that wrap it around your boot. That's just like, if you're constantly working out and running and doing all this stuff, it's just a nuisance to have. It makes no sense. So it's like, in Raiders, guess what? You don't have to wear that all the time, So it's like, oh, that's nice. It's just more common sense, more. It was everything that I was looking for in a lot of ways I'd never seen before. So I didn't have a reference point, but once I saw it, I was like, I like this. I like, all of it. So I thought it was just going to be a total gut check, and I was very surprised with how much I loved and enjoyed it. And I thought even, it was the best course and most professionally ran, best experience that I ever had. Once I got out of selection was the most professional, like, craziest high level thing that I had seen. Yeah. And it was really simple.
And how long is it?
A month. Now they have pre-selection and those things, so it's like 6 weeks and then you go. So I don't know exactly what it is now, but yeah, it was awesome. And it was a total, just like I said, it was these things that I was in breakdown or I didn't appreciate, or things that bothered me or rubbed me wrong about the regular Marine Corps. Well, this solved a lot of it for me. Yeah. And then it also showed that, because I never got in trouble again when I was in Raiders. Yeah. Wow. And a big part was, like, after my last big hoorah that I had, where I got in major trouble, I made the decision not to drink anymore when I woke up that morning, and I had everybody in my room and they were like,
full blown.
And I knew that I knew that I was coming off a year restriction. I knew that I was going on another one for something I didn't even remember. So that was what I was like, I can't control when Mr. Hyde comes out, but I can control drinking. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I had to turn off. And so I ended up doing the next 10 years without any alcohol.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And rare. I mean, it's a rare thing for most military folks. So once you made it through Marine Raider training, you deployed to Afghanistan not long after, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And a pretty significant incident, which you've talked about before, but I'd love to kind of look at it from the perspective that you took going into that deployment, what you expected, what you were told that you guys were going to be doing, and then ultimately kind of how it turned out.
So we went in village stability operations, so VSO, to promote stability, development, and governance in part of Helmand, Afghanistan, right on the Helmand River historical fighting position. And so we were basically getting dropped into an enemy village for 7 months to do VSO. And I think going into it, the senior team members that I had were so seasoned, and I was very confident in their abilities, and so was a lot of everyone else at my unit with certain people we had on our team. And so it was almost like I was going into Afghanistan with like a big security blanket, because these guys could control air like no one can. These guys can do everything. And so it's like, and they've been there multiple times, and they've actually fought and done commando missions and all that stuff right where we're going to be living. So they know the land, And so the senior Marines that we had were built a lot of confidence. And so I think going in there, that was, but it was also, we were getting chatter and we were getting feedback that the team that we were replacing, they had just gone into the enemy village like within a month before we replaced them. And so, and the fighting season is just starting. So it's the beginning of the year. So it's like March time frame. They had been there for a month and they were getting attacked so bad. Like they would try to go out on just a presence patrol, or they try to leave the wire to go do something, and they would get pinned down and have to call for fire to bound back to the site.
Wow. And
we were hearing that, and it's like, they can't do anything. Like they're completely pinned down. So how are we going to live there for 7 months? And it's like, no, and even some of the guys were like, this is impossible or whatever. And so it was like, this is going to be a crazy experience. But to the benefit of the training, I think that all of the soft pipelines do a tremendous job of conditioning you going into that. One of the things that we could talk about after is, your vulnerability gets taken away completely going into the Marines, going into soft, going into any of that stuff. And later on in life, you got to figure out how to get that back so you can communicate and use your emotions and your words and stuff. But I think that being so conditioned and being trained and prepared, it really, really said something, because I saw a lot of people that ended up at our site that were generator mechanics, or maybe they were a Terp from New York City and they thought they were coming to work at Camp Leatherneck. Or they thought they were going to like a big base and they're going to make X amount of money, and they sent them out to our site, and it's like we're under attack the first day they get there, and they're looking at us with the eye of the gerbil, because they never were trained, they weren't conditioned, they weren't prepared, their mind isn't prepared to be there, and all these things. I saw medics that would come out to us and we'd have crazy things go on, and they didn't have the tools or the conditioning to prepare them for what was happening out there.
Wow. So day one, when you get there, you guys are under attack and taking fire right out of the gate.
Day one, I get there, I was advanced party. So I went out early to sign for equipment, because that was one of my jobs at the time. And when I got out, the team that was there, they're under attack. Someone, like one of the Afghans, lost his legs at our site within a couple hours of me being there. One of our Afghan local police, which that was my job as well, was running the Afghan local police. So within a couple hours, one of my guys loses both of his legs above the knee. So it was definitely like, whoa, this is real, real fast. And then I feel like I was just kind of trying to figure out the lay of the land and get as much information as possible before my team came in. But once my team came in, it was like that security blanket that I talked about. I felt like I had, I was a new guy. These guys knew what they were doing. They had been there. They were confident, and they were very fluent in all the things that you need to do to run modern warfare and combat operations, and to include drones. Drones were just coming online at that point. We went from like having a drone system where you'd have to drive it like 20 miles an hour and throw it up to having drones that you could just fly.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, guys that could handle aircraft, that could multitask and manage all different kinds of things as part of a combat operation. And that gave us a lot of confidence to go out and do stuff.
The first time that you went out to do the village stability operations, did you guys get hit and get into a firefight the very first time, or what was the very first time that you got into a legitimate troops in contact type of engagement?
With our team, I mean, anytime that we went out on any engagement, even if it was like a ambush patrol or anything, it would always end up taking contact and getting back to our site.
Yeah.
But we pretty much were under attack almost the whole deployment in certain ways, because so we're living in an enemy village, but we have a G-Boss, which is a camera system that's like 100 feet tall. So you don't have to be the smartest man in the world to know that that's where we're at, and that camera at the top is where you need to hide from that. So they're always like typically one tree line away from where that camera can see. So if you want to go and look at the bad guys or find them, you got to go a couple tree lines over and then just wait. And then in the morning, they're going to come out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would get attacked sometimes every day, sometimes multiple times. Sometimes it would be the A team attacking us and like good shots, good hits. Sometimes it would be like the C team or D team. And it's like, this is a joke, so, but we never knew. You always had to be prepared for everything. And one of the ideas I started having back then, because, I would have all my regular jobs, like training the Afghan local police, having these meetings, doing all this different stuff. And then I would also have to take all the serial numbers of all the weapons, of all the vehicles, of all the stuff, like, just different things like that. So sometimes I would be taking serial numbers and then we would get attacked. Boom. And it's like, okay, so if I'm just going about my day and I'm just in autopilot and I'm just doing X, Y, and Z, and then I need to unlock like everything, right? If all hell breaks loose, what's the process, or what's the acronym, or what's the thing that we use to do that? Because we had an acronym for everything. And so that's the one thing I started thinking, like, well, what is it? What could I create? What could I do? And so what it would be is like, okay, we get attacked, boom, get behind cover, get behind a wall. And then typically at our site, because we had a bunch of different cooks and candlestick makers, it would be like, get behind the wall and then see who's out that you need to get them inside, right? Or figure it out. And then it was like, okay, well, even better than that, if I get behind the wall and then I take a deep breath, and then I think, and then I make a decision, and then I go, that would feel more impactful and more productive than just behind a wall, think, go, right? It was like behind the wall, breathe, think, go, whatever that is. So just like kind of something in my head. Well, I ended up, and then I found Udaloop, right? Which is observe, orient, decide, act. It's what fighter pilots use kind of for that same thing, to unlock performance. And it's a loop system, and they can do the OODA loop in a second or less, and then they could do another one and another one, another one, until they OODA their way out of their position, or they get into a better position. So for me, it was like, I never found that, but I was always thinking about it. And then whenever I got out, that's when I came up with the performance thing of that Don and I came up with. My partner for Deep in Fitness, also a Marine Raider, came up with free operating system, which is focus, relaxation, economy of motion, efficient breathing. So it's like, that's a lot of what we use to train people in the pool, but also all the different athletes and everything that we worked with over the last 9 years and work with now is like, what do you what's our mental focus? How many tabs do we have open in our computer, right? And then relaxation, how are we managing our energy expenditure, our battery life, right? If we're a video game, you want to be at 100% or somewhere around there. Where are we at and how are we managing that, right? And what is it that adds battery? What is it that takes it away? So how do we better manage that, right? Economy of motion is flow versus drag. So the two biomechanics of swimming is increased propulsion, reduce friction. So we always want to find ways as a water survival instructor to create flow and remove drag, right? Remove drag sources. So this is like typically with the free operating system, what you're asking yourself is, okay, what am I focused on? Okay, am I relaxed? Meaning, do I have any extra tension, or is there anything that's limiting me from like my ideal performance or my optimal performance or potential? And then it goes into flow versus drag, which is simply where's my drag showing up? Where's my drag source, right? And sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's, whatever it is. Like for me coming in here today, I have some drag because I've been in some heavy podcasts before, and I've done so, and I have to check that because I've never been here before. This is a new experience. So I almost have to let that go, leave it at the door, and just step into possibility and come out, come in here. And the last one is efficient breathing. So, breathing is something that happens automatically our whole life, just like blinking. And we don't have to put any focus on it. We'll keep breathing until we're not. But like when we do put focus on it, we can get a lot out of it. We can get a lot of positive. It can help unlock performance. And then the biggest thing is cognitive control. So if you can control your breathing, it's like a remote control to control your brain. Even when you feel like you're out of control or things feel really stressful, if you can just go to 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out through the nose, a couple of reps, and then you notice, I'm telling myself to do this, and then I'm doing it, and I'm experiencing and noticing myself. So who's in control? I'm in control. I'm holding the wheel, right? So that's the free operating system. But going back to Afghanistan, our team there was something special about our team that we believed in each other, even in the impossible moments, and even in like not knowing what we were going to get into or what was going to happen. But we had a team motto that was making it happen. And we even had tank tops. I still have mine. It's all torn up, but it has making it happen on the back, and it has our team logo and all that stuff. And this is also one of our team shirts for that team. We had a reunion last year. It was the first time that everybody saw each other.
Oh, wow.
So
this
was one of the shirts that the guys made for the reunion.
That's cool. Man, that's such great protocol for, having an actual plan to prevent, panic and bad decision making, and that seems simple enough to even under stress be able to remember and work through it. That's great. Before we get into the insider attack, that's what sounds like kind of the biggest or most significant thing that happened on that deployment, which almost sounds weird because, when you're getting shot at, that's pretty significant, and that happened constantly. Before we talk about that, are there any other operations during that deployment that you went out on that are significant in terms of you remembering them or thinking about them often, or that had a significant impact on you?
Yeah, I would be lying if I didn't bring up the June 14th, 2012 op that we had. So, to your point earlier about the politics and stuff, that some of it, a lot of it's out of our control, but the week of June 14th, 2012, President Obama had signed a directive with Karzai, the president of Afghan at the time, that no bombs would be dropped in the villages anymore. So no more bombs would be dropped. And, so that was literally the day or 2 days before we were out on this op. And the way that we got called out to support ODA, Army Special Forces team, and we were going out to set up a blocking position, and it was in a bomb maker's village, and it was, maybe a couple of kilometers away from where we were, but we had never been there before, so we had no experience. And so we went in the middle of the night. We patrolled out through all the minefields. There's bombs in the ground everywhere, so you got to move slow and methodical. And we got into the compound in the middle of the night. The Army SF team that we were supporting stepped on an IED in the middle of the night, so they ended up having to return to base. So instead of them flushing the Taliban towards us and us being a blocking position, we ended up getting surrounded in this village. And so by about 3 or 4 in the morning, my commander had made the decision that we needed to separate the team and move half of the team out into the tree line in case the compound got overran when the sun came up. And because they were frantically running around trying to find what building we were in. They knew we were out. And so I was on the roof with the machine gun. One of my best friends, Rick, he took over the rooftop position, and then me and half the team went out into the tree line with some of our Afghans about 300 meters away. And so right when the sun was coming up, they were everywhere trying to find us. And it was like the spidey senses, I've never had it like that, where it was like, we are effed. This is really, really bad, dude. And like where we were at in the tree line, I mean, there was no concealment. Like I had like a leaf in front of me, and I'm like, what are we doing? So we were in the trench. Now, what happened is the Taliban was like, they were moving, and they were coming inside the building that the team was at, and that was like the last point where they had to take shots, but everybody held as long as they could, because we knew as soon as we fired anything, everyone knows where we're at. So these guys had to shoot the guys that were coming in to the building, and then within maybe 10 seconds, there was a bunch of machine gun fire that came towards the compound. My buddy Rick got shot through and through the neck, 7.62 round, and my captain got shot in the back, immediately paralyzed from the chest down.
Man.
Derek. And so
did Rick survive that?
Yeah.
No doubt.
So we basically, Derek came over the radio. It was like, hey, I'm hit. I'm on the roof. I need the medic. The medic was our buddy Ginger. That was the medic that was with us, and he was with me in the tree line, like next to me, buddy system. And so we had to get up and run back, 300 meters through the situation. And so once we got out of the tree line, we started running. We're engulfed in fire. And when it's gunshots are really close to you, like in that environment, it sounds like the snaps, like the little snapper things that you throw down for like fireworks,
bang snaps,
the little poppers or whatever. Yeah. The ground is snapping and there's dirt moving, and it's like a lot of snaps. That's a really bad vibe and feeling, because that it's like you're right in the kill zone. And so we were getting all of that so much that it was like slow motion, like adrenaline dump, where my medic was way faster than me, and I had a machine gun and all the rounds and everything, and he was way faster than me, and he was in front of me, and so many rounds were coming that he was doing somersaults because he was falling and rolling, and I was lifting him up and telling him to run, and I thought he was getting shot, but it was that his feet were moving, trying to move too fast than what they could, and he was literally toppling over, and it felt like it was slow motion. It was the craziest thing. We get all the way back to the compound. We check each other, our legs, our arms, everything. We don't have any bullets in us. We're like in shock. The next thing I remember is they're saying, Rick's dead. We need to get Derek off the roof. And so crazy situation. But so Rick, I remember, was on the ground, and our medic basically sealed off one side of his neck, and then sealed off the other side, and basically brought him back within a minute or so. So we went from like everyone was calling out that he was dead to him like winking at me And I'm like, bro, dude. And we went through like all of our Raider training together, so we were pretty tight. And I was close. You know, we're one of my closest friends in the world. And so the funnier story, or the funnier moment of this whole thing, right before we met Evacum, which was crazy experience. Rick's on the ground and he's on a stretcher and he's telling me, water, I need water. And I had my Camelback and I'm like, dude, it's like 130 degrees, you know, like I gave him a little squirt, but I didn't realize like you can't give someone water that just got shot through and through the neck without them like almost dying. So he like starts coughing and choking and I'm like looking around because
I didn't do it. Yeah. I didn't give him water.
Yeah. But, you know, there was the quote, there's no greater love than a man that lays down his life for his friends. For us, for our team, for the Afghans, for the Terps, for everybody that was there, because they had to carry both the guys out on litters. And so when you're carrying a full gear on litter, you don't have your weapon up at the same time.
Right.
These guys ran through a murder hole, fully engulfed in fire, without a chance, without even an ability to use their weapon because they're holding the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can, but like, yeah,
not really.
It's not happening. You're running these guys to the bird because they're bleeding out or they're expiring in a couple minutes. Yeah. So, Jacqueline, who was in charge, Brian Jacqueline, he ended up getting a Navy Cross for the whole thing. A bunch of our teammates, everyone got awards for different stuff, but not that awards are important, but just to explain some of the magnitude. Because Jacqueline basically, he avoided the radio right when everything happened. He went straight to the sat phone. He called our colonel, and he got approval to drop bombs.
Even after the bomb? Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's why he didn't use the radio, because that had just been approved. But he said, if we don't drop, we're going to die. We have to.
And so they did?
Yeah.
So is it safe to assume then that it was the close air support that allowed you guys to break enough contact to get out of there alive?
Yeah, we didn't break contact. We had to stay in there. We didn't get replaced until a day later in the middle of the night.
So you're just getting contacted
all day.
How did you keep them from overrunning you?
Air support.
So it was only air support
all day.
So
enveloping us.
Wow. So it kept them from overrunning you, but not from continuous gunfire.
Right.
Wow. Dude, and this was like a day and a half period of constant incoming.
Yeah, it was actually longer than that, but for us, for almost all of us, so our whole team, we were, I mean, because like we ran out of water, you know, during that later that day. We were cramped out. We went through all this shit. Like we were almost out of ammo, and we had a resupply come in and basically wave off and drop the resupply in the middle of the field. That might as well have been on Mars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because even if you wave your hand above the wall, you're going to get shot. So we can't go out there in the middle of the day in the minefield and drag this couple thousand pound thing back.
Yeah.
So we were kind of screwed in the middle of the night that night, though. And this is just weird small world stuff. But it's like we got replaced by a SEAL platoon. Jacqueline and our JTAC Dave stayed on site with them to combat advise. But that was Dan Crenshaw.
Really?
That was where he lost his eye the next morning at the same place.
Wow.
Was that whole thing. So it's like, you know, there was the ODA team that called us in that we went out to go do the mission with. They got hit an IED. They left. We get, you know, pegged out there, and then a SEAL platoon comes and replaces us, and that happens to be Dan Crenshaw loses his eye. It's just like,
that's wild.
You can't make this stuff up, man. Yeah. My two buddies, like, you know, Rick is a character in Battlefield 6. You know what I mean? Yeah. And my partner, or my buddy Derek, that was our commander, he's been my mentor, but that guy is basically been changing the game in urology and creating smart catheters and all these different medical devices with no medical background. It was just because he was paralyzed and then he had to start using it, and that he started innovating, creating like life transformational changes. Now he's built his own urology machines that are in hospitals. He's FDA approved, classic, insane.
Yeah, it's a classic special operations adapt and overcome, and the ingenuity that exists in those communities is staggering.
At the highest level.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like this was probably the gnarliest gunfight and operation that you guys went on, where you're going outside the wire, but it also sounds like it was almost just another day, though. I mean, you had a lot of experiences similar to
that? This was definitely the longest day I probably ever had in my life.
Most intense.
Yeah. I remember because me and my buddy Fees, after we did the medevac and everything, and granted, like, we had already been up for at least a day, maybe two, but we were asking ourselves, like, what time is it? Just in the daytime. Is it 3? Is it 4? And it was like, bro, it's 9 a.m.
Oh, wow. It's like time standing still.
Oh my gosh, bro. This is already the longest day.
Yeah.
It's 9 a.m., so it was one of those days. But, to tip my hat to the Raider instructors, because they made the Hell Week or the Raider Spirit and all those things, and shooting phase and all these different things. They made it so it never made sense, because they always made it so much more than what it felt like it needed to be. But then again, full preparation for everything that happened.
It all made sense.
It all made sense. Yeah.
Can we deviate from your timeline for a minute to talk about a current event that one of the incidents in the operation that you just had reminded me of, that I wanted to get your opinion on? Have you paid attention much to the Charlie Kirk investigation?
Mm-hmm.
Your buddy Rick takes a 7.62 round through and through in the neck. I assume that you don't know how far away the shooter was. Do you have a ballpark idea of how far away he was?
Within 200 meters.
So a similar distance, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
I know 7.62 by 39 round is not the same as a 30-06. 30-06 has way more velocity and a higher probability to go through and through at that distance. From having been on the ground and watching one of your best friends take we'll say, somewhat comparable round from a similar distance through the neck, when you see the investigation of what we've been told and what your experiences have been, coupled with seeing the video, all of the aftermath, how does that shake out to you? And do you believe what we're being told, or does it seem like there's more to the story that we're not?
Everything about that is a red flag. And from my experience, doing intelligence work or any of that, it's, if you have red flags, you need to drill down on it and peel the onion back. And so it doesn't make sense to me. And there's a lot of it that it's basically, it just creates rabbit holes.
Yeah.
So I could go down those all day long.
Yeah. I mean, I agree 100% in all of the other, the aftermath, the investigation, what we've been told, the paving over of the site,
Right.
days afterwards. But most specifically, because I can't think of another guest I've had on, or another human being I know that has, been present with a gunshot wound of a similar caliber from a similar distance, in the neck, and witnessed it and saw the guy survive. I assume that the round didn't hit any of his spine or bone or spinal cord. But just from seeing Rick go through that and seeing the video of Charlie and what we were told, the caliber that was used and how it hit and fragmented and hit his spine and dispersed, et cetera, do you buy that aspect of it?
The biggest thing that comes up for me as you're saying that is the 18 Deltas and the medics and the SARCs, the Special Amphibious Reconnaissance Corpsmen. Those are our 18 Deltas. So they've been through 18 Delta and they're recon Marines. Those guys were miracle workers. People like, I mean, I saw Afghans with the craziest stuff, you know, shot, blown up, shrapnel, you know, in all kinds of crazy things. You know, one guy had shrapnel that literally cut off a piece of the back of his dome right here, where it was just like gushing. Dude saved him. You know, like, guys, I saw him do so much that I'm just saying, the first thing I thought of when you said that is, was there an 18 Delta there? You know, was there someone ready to do triage? And like, probably not like that, like where we had guys ready, you know? So I think that's probably one of the biggest differences. And then outside of that, it's, you know, there's all kinds of weird actors, you know, and like different lenses that you got to kind of look at when you look at these things. But to me, it's an interesting psyop, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. I guess the one kind of singular question I'm trying to understand and get your expertise on, having been really the only person that I know that has witnessed something similar, is, do you think that a 30-06 round from that distance hitting him in the neck would have or could have acted the way that it did, and did that little of damage and broken apart from hitting his spine at that distance with that caliber? Does that make sense to you ballistically?
No.
Yeah. August hits, and I start thinking about what I actually wear versus what's just taking up space. Most guys have a closet full of stuff they never reach for and 2 or 3 pieces that they grab every single time. Quince sent me some of their gear, and I'll tell you, their European linen shirt has been one of those pieces I keep grabbing. The quality is genuinely there for the price, and that's the whole point. Quince is built around fewer, better pieces. Premium materials, built to last, designed to become things that you actually live in. Their ultra-soft organic cotton tees, premium Mongolian cashmere sweaters, premium denim and tailored chinos from just $60. These are staples with real quality behind them. And everything at Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than the similar brands, because they go directly to ethical factories and cut out the middlemen. You're paying for the product, not the markup. I wear it, I trust the quality, and you should check it out for yourself. Upgrade your everyday. Download the Quince app for app-exclusive offers, or go to quince.com/micdrop. Get free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. It's now available in Canada and the UK too. That's QUINCE.com/micdrop. Like it would have done massive amounts of damage by comparison to what was shown.
Yeah, and granted, I'm not the smartest man in the world, but
you don't need to be.
Right.
I mean, you've seen. I mean, I guess I'm curious. You know, a through and through shot in the neck with an AK round, you know, is a significant amount of damage, I assume.
Oh yeah, it's just a miracle from God that he's still alive.
Yeah. So again, I know it was a through and through. It didn't hit Rick's spine, didn't hit any bone. But to compare what you saw with happening in Rick's neck versus what you saw in the video of Charlie's neck, 2 totally different scenarios. Yep. Yeah. We'll leave it at that. I just it's something that, you know, continues to compound in its both curiousness and kind of makes you scratch your head of thinking like, what is really going on here? And there's a million other intangibles there that we haven't talked about and don't have another four hours to get into that based on everything else. But I appreciate your opinion on that.
Absolutely.
All right. So one of the things that, you know, has been the most prominent in terms of telling the story, and I know you've told it several times, don't want to beat the dead horse, but I wouldn't want to completely skip over the insider attack in Afghanistan on that deployment where it was pretty life-changing. At the risk of beating the dead horse, can you, I guess, summarize that in a way where, if there's anything that you can add, anything that you've reflected on, even since having shared it on a number of instances, that maybe you look at it differently now, or has anything changed, I guess, since you've told that story?
Yeah, so it was August 13th, 2012. To give context, 2 days before that, or 3 days before that, We had 3 raiders that were with us, not with our team, but with another team that was in our company deployed with us. We lost 3 raiders from an insider attack 3 days before our insider attack, right? So it was Ryan Jeske, Matt Manukian, and Sky Moat that got killed, and we were actually out on an op when that happened. And afterwards, we ended up returning to base, and it was a big deal for all of us. That those 3 guys. It was the team commander, team chief, and the EOD tech, the bomb guy, all got killed in an insider attack. A guy, and so that was kind of heavy on our minds. That week we had guys going back for funerals and all that stuff. So if you can imagine, 2 days after that, I get woken up and there's an Afghan that wants to meet with me from out in the village. And this guy I had, some dealings with. And so he came and he had a big story to tell me. And so I told him, come back in a week. I don't want to hear it. And I went back inside. Well, it was like 7 in the morning or early in the morning, and nobody was up yet besides the security watches, right? The people in the towers and whoever's on the security in the operations center. So I went out, had that meeting, came back in, and since I was up, I went to we had this little kitchen, like slumlord kitchen out there that had, cereal and whatever makeshift stuff. So I went and got cereal, sat down at the picnic table, was eating, and then all of a sudden I got blown off the table. And, big explosion, and I'm out on the ground, like back here from where I was sitting. And I was, for moments, like I couldn't see. So I was holding my eyes open, it was blacked out. And so I was kind of panicked. And then once I started to get my vision back, I started seeing some weird stuff. And things that didn't make sense. So our Afghan Special Forces team that we had with us the whole deployment, they had been there through when Rick and Derek got shot. They'd been there through some big ops and some crazy stuff that we had to overcome. They got replaced like a week before this with a new Afghan Special Forces team. The new team looked badass. They all had long beards. They were really good at training. They looked the part, right? But we didn't have, and to give people context, we don't vet these guys when we get assigned an Afghan Special Forces team. It's not like our intel guys are vetting each one to make sure they're all good, right? So we just get them assigned. Well, a week in, one of the guys decided he's going to try to kill all of us one morning, and so he basically, one of the towers we lived at a little tiny outpost inside of an enemy village. So there's 3 towers. Two of them that are manned by U.S. So we had Army infantry, and then we had us, and then we had a third one that was manned by the Afghan Special Forces team. And granted, since we get attacked all the time, we're used to everybody's always manning the posts, and we're used to when we get attacked, we all have a battle rhythm and a reaction and a response that every key person has a priority of work, right? So there's some people that provide ammo to the post. There's some people that get on the radio and call people out in town and get more atmospherics. There's, everybody does something. So, but we'd never, the insider attacks is more so psychological. That's what I'm want to get across here, that it took us actually one of the Army guys coming over the radio and saying, one of the interpreters is telling us that one of the Afghans has gone crazy in the tower and needs to get killed. Before that, we thought they had us locked in with mortars. And granted, we're all concussed. We all getting hit with multiple RPGs, and we're all rocked, and me and a couple of the raiders are in the operations center at that point. So like once I was able to get up, I went and I crawled into where my interpreters lived. And the funny part is when I got in there, I'm looking at them and they're looking at me and they're like, big problem. They all got funny shirts on, like a light bulb that says turn on the power and all that stuff. And, they're all holding hands and big problem. And I'm like, man, this is a big problem, because it's a big problem, but I also got to get away from you guys because this is doing no good. Me, like, you know what I mean? So kept moving, got into the operations center. Well, when I went into the operations center, the dude in the post is directly on top of us on the operations center, which is literally just a bunker with a bunch of sandbags on top of it, right? But once I got in there, luckily I got in there while he didn't have one loaded, because he let off about 12 RPGs into our little bunker or into our camp. But the hardest ones, because I'll never forget when I got into the operations center and he started hitting them top down from the post to the bunker. I mean, I've never felt rocked or concussed like that ever in my life.
I'll bet.
You know, and me and the two raiders that were there, we were delirious and we were laughing and we were doing all this stuff. One of our Army guys was having a really hard time in there, you know? So it was like, and then we were looking at the screens, and we can see like around our camp on the screens inside of the operations center, everything's destroyed and on fire. And so we're looking at like all of our systems that help keep us alive. They're all on fire and destroyed. And it's like, and you know, 3 of the Afghan Special Forces guys got killed in that first exchange with the guys was shooting his own guys.
So the guy that was doing the insider attack was one of the guys that had the beard that was more squared away than what you guys were used to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It just
No.
So from an aftermath standpoint, I guess, how did you end up neutralizing the attacker, and then what happened afterwards?
Well, any time that you shoot an RPG or any kind of a rocket, you have to clear your back blast area, right? So that's why like people that shoot it usually have a spotter, or they have a buddy, and they say, back blast area all clear. And then the buddy checks it, clear, fire, boom, right? This guy was by himself, and he's shooting into an enclosed or a semi-enclosed security tower that has, you can't clear, there's no backblast area.
Yeah, he's concussing himself.
Yes. Yeah. So he was, jokingly that you could have shot that guy with paintball rounds. He would have died after that, but he was on fire basically, you know? So, but all the other Afghans, 3 of them had been killed, but we basically got with them on the backside of our little refrigerator, which is where they were all hiding. And we went back there and cleared the area to get back there. And then we worked out a plan with them and, took care of it. But like I said, and there's been a lot of people that were in insider attacks that, have reached out and connected with me. And I think we all have a lot in common, even though we're all in different ones. The biggest thing is there's a psychological thing that we all kind of have to deal with or overcome, because when you have your bubble, your security bubble, and it's like, this is the only place I'm safe, right? And you trust on that, and then that gets destroyed, it kind of messes with you a little bit to where you have trust issues.
I mean, to me, that would level your nervous system permanently.
Right.
Like you can't relax, and I can't even imagine. Obviously there's a huge hit to morale when something like that happens. Was there a speech or a kind of a circling of the wagons within your immediate group of actual U.S. forces that anybody brought you in and kind of tried to rally the troops and give you a Patton-style speech of how we need to move forward or anything like that? Or how did you guys process and move through that?
So to give a little bit of context, because me and like the guys that I was with, my teammates, that we all got hit and everyone was concussed and all that. Our medic tested us, and the ones that failed, we got medevaced, immediately. Mm-hmm. But like literally the culture of our unit, and this was 1st Raider Battalion at the time, or 1st MSOB is what it was called back then before they named us official Raider, which was Marine Special Operations Battalion. But our unit and the culture there, our executive officer that we had at the time, he was in Afghanistan again, but the deployment before, he lost both of his legs above the knee. He's back, right, with both above the knee. He's still operating.
Wow.
right? He got put back on it, like, you know, fully approved to come out. So we had guys like that were with us. And so for us, that all the stuff that we had brain injury, we're like, everything's invisible. We still got arms and legs. So it's like, dude, we got to get back to our team. We got to get back to the site. Cause when we all got medevaced, they had to bring in like a bunch of ODA guys to like even fill security at our site, cause we didn't have the manpower. So like for the 2 days, we had all types of strap hangers and people that came in to support until we could get back from being medevaced.
Wow.
So we were like, we got to get back. We don't care. Don't run any tests on us. You know, like, let us go. We went to the coffee shop on Camp Leatherneck and then went and slept at the commando thing for 2 days and then went back.
I imagine that you had traumatic brain injury from that blast, yes?
I mean, I got so many traumatic brain injuries.
From all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, just check.
Yeah, wow. Did any of that surface for the rest of deployment for you or any of your guys where there were noticeable significant problems from that attack?
It was just, I felt like I wasn't as sharp. You know, I started noticing I was like forgetting things, or I was like letting things, you know, I was missing things, or, you know, I would have one of my guys told me, hey, you've had somebody out at the gate for like 5 hours. And I'm like, who? And then they told me, and it's like, what? And then it's like, no, you know. And so a little bit of slippage there, but I would say that the biggest thing that I had was, and I didn't realize it at the time, but my ability to deal with pressure, with blasts, I didn't have that anymore.
But I mean, it sounds similar to a heat stroke, right? It's like once you've had it bad, then you're way more susceptible to it. So now like your brain and that entire CNS function is far more fragile than it used to be. In terms of how you dealt, or if you dealt with any of the Afghan commandos, did that cease your interaction with them, that happening, or did you continue to work with them?
No, so because they had 3 guys killed in that scenario, they all had PTS, whatever, and they basically
pulled out.
They pulled out that day.
Oh wow!
So then we didn't have Afghan Special Forces guys until the very end of deployment.
And so what did you guys just continue on business as usual, going out doing recon recon patrols, recon by fire, or any of that kind of stuff? I mean, did you just continue to go out and look for trouble, basically? We
had like and that was one of my jobs, was the Afghan local police, but we had at least 60 Afghan local police at all times throughout that whole deployment. And we had our Terps, and we had the Afghan police. So, you know, we could do a lot with them, with the Afghan local police. And they were actually, some of them from the area. So that supported as well.
Yeah, wow. So you wrap that deployment up. You go home. What was it like coming home after that, and kind of walk us through from coming home, any issues or aftermath from that deployment, and then ultimately 2 years later you go to a Pacific, you head to the Philippines and go to Southeast Asia, which is a totally different operational environment. Can you walk us through kind of the rest of your time?
Yeah, so got to get into a little bit of special activities with some the human intelligence stuff. So got to go to courses after I got back from Afghanistan. I think that was kind of the focus. Were
you rattled though? Like once you came home, and did that change who you were, how you looked at things, alter your ability to train or how you trained or anything like that? Like, was that a pivotal moment going through that insider attack and then subsequent?
Yeah, it changed a lot. So I didn't notice it as much as at first, because I was doing more and more intelligence stuff. And so I was behind a computer or at a desk or at courses, and I wasn't like wearing all my gear and behind a gun or, doing anything. So, but when I might have been like 2 years later where we were doing some rocket training, and like people started letting rockets off, and I was like in line to shoot, and I had to like pretend like I had gone through and then go over with the guys that were done because I was throwing up.
Oh, wow.
And then I started feeling where when I would shoot, I never ever experienced this before with shooting just a AR or an M4, was like any time that I pulled the trigger and I felt the round go off, it felt like an explosion.
Wow. Just the recoil alone from an M4.
It felt like these explosions that like each one was weighing on me and adding, and it would make me nauseous. Then I was going on plane rides, or I was going on trips, and I was feeling like my head was going to explode.
Wow.
So I had like some damage in my right ear that I didn't find for like 3 or 4 years after. So it's funny because, and to your point, like it's just suffer in silence. That's pretty much what the thing was. It's like, dude, everybody here's got problems, bro.
You're not special.
Yeah, you want me to pat you on the ass?
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yes, please.
Seriously, you know?
I'll take it.
Yeah. So
I'm in the Navy though, right?
Right. So anyway, that was just kind of the culture, but suck it up, deal with it. And that works until it doesn't work, right? Then you got operator syndrome and moral injury or survivor's guilt and, you know, transition, and you're going from survival into meaning. And so you survive. You don't think about a lot of this stuff. When you're over there, it's just, hey, I can't mess up. I can't get one of my buddies hurt. You know, we all got to make it back. And then you make it back. And then it's like, I think pretty much all of us are in disbelief. We could have never imagined that we would have made it through survival with all of these, you know, brothers, and that we would then get freed. Here's your transition. You're out. And that those guys that made it through survival with us, once they started having to assign meaning to the things that happened, they didn't make that transition. They checked out, right? Mm-hmm. They didn't survive that. So it's like, you know, survival and meaning. And I don't think that the insider attack's a gift for me, because it changed me and the things that I deal with, you know, with noise and lights and the little battles that I go through that nobody can really see, because they can look at me and say, oh, you look good. You got your arms and legs and you can walk around and all that. But there are things that really bother me from those events. And then with the nervous system thing, I mean, for years I would wake up in the middle of the night and it would just be like, you know, I boom. I just feel like a boom, like a loud explosion, or like, and I wake up, you know, and it's like, it has too much power over me is what it felt like. And I couldn't get it. And so, and I created a superhighway to that memory where I just kept going back, right? Because I felt like, you know, yeah, Mr. Magoo made it through, but I also felt like, man, I didn't really have the situational awareness that I would hope that I would have had. Like, you know, I couldn't just swivel my head around and see that guy had voted that day that he was going to kill all of us. Like I didn't have any essay of that, you know, and those things bothered me. Survivor's guilt, or the, you know, people that got hurt, or, you know, building relationships with certain people and then leaving the country, all those different things. I've get to do work with Marines from Wounded Warrior in California where I live, and moral injury is definitely a thing, where it's like a lot of these guys that were there at the withdrawal, which I can totally understand where they're coming from. They felt like their hands were tied and they couldn't help. So they got now they feel like a moral injury, you know. It's like, that's how do you navigate that? Well, survivor's guilt also for everybody or anybody that's felt that. And my buddy Derek, that's been like a tremendous mentor and just friend to me, he told me one time, he said, do you think that anybody that was wounded or killed would feel better if you were more fucked up than you are? And I was like, no. He's like, stop doing that to yourself, dude. It's not worth it.
I've I guess maybe not always, but long since taken that perspective, you know, having lost some really close friends, and in that kind of more immediate aftermath, finding myself, you know, in that kind of low stage and thinking like, well, if the roles were reversed and I was the one, you know, that didn't come home and somehow had the ability to observe my closest friends feeling sorry for themselves and turn into a bottle or pills or whatever. Like I would want to reach through the afterlife and slap them, and say, hey, like take advantage of the opportunity that I didn't get and stop wasting it, and that's always made a huge difference for me in how I look at that survivor's guilt kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a solid grounding point.
Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to get that kind of coloring on it. So you get into the special activity stuff. I know that a lot of that stuff is pretty sensitive and you can't talk much. For what you can describe kind of what that is and how that led to the next deployment to the Philippines and how different that is from Afghanistan.
As someone put it, it's like we're always going to go to countries, train militaries, and shoot targets. Always, right? And that's the tactical level of it. But there's two other chessboards that you're not seeing if you're just doing that. And there's an operational, and then there's a strategic, right? So every country that we go to shoot these targets and train these militaries, there's operational and strategic objectives as well. And if you get the training and the access, then you can get tasked with doing some of that work. But that it's a need to know basis and the rest of your team doesn't know, right? And so that's kind of the basis of it, on a comical side, a lot of it is about taking, psychopaths that are in that type of job and just training them how to be empathetic, like good, like relationships, build relationships with anybody from any country, run meetings with anybody, be able to train them, with whatever their learning style is, and be able to, crawl, walk, run, build trust to the point that you could potentially recruit them or whatever for that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. In other words, there's not much that you can talk about it other than what you said.
No, but the biggest thing for me was, there was probably 2 handfuls at the most of people that did that job at my unit, and they were all very, very, very valuable, like insights, and people that, like the level 3s or the the ASO guys that basically trained me. I mean, I almost felt like that was like its own course, just getting that mentorship and that, like, they're basically building me up based off of their experiences. And that was outside of going to the courses. Yeah. The courses though were, you go to these courses and like some of them are scenarios that like up to 4 months long, you're in a scenario. You got surveillance on you every day. You got to detect surveillance. If you don't detect surveillance for one day, you're dropped from the course. Yeah. You're going home. It could be foot surveillance, vehicle, all that stuff. So I think, a lot of interesting training. I don't know that I use a lot of that now, but the meetings and some of the frameworks and the stuff, I had to like almost untrain myself a little bit when I got out, because a lot of that job and skill set, it's all coming from a security mindset, which can be like a fear mindset, where it's like, hey, I'm going to create a dossier on you, Mike, and then I'm going to test your baseline. And then every time if you do anything that's out of pattern, I'm going to drill down on you and maybe throw you a test here and see how you respond and do that. And it's like, dude, that's
exhausting.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's not creating the ROI. You don't need it anymore.
Yeah. Well, on that, I mean, is there any part of that for you is kind of impossible to completely ignore? I mean, like, for example, if you're in you're at home, you're home for a week or 2 or whatever, and you're doing kind of a normal routine, do you feel like if somebody was tailing you that it would stand out enough to where even if you're trying not to pay attention and move past that psychological perspective, that you would still notice and pick it up and act accordingly or react accordingly?
I wouldn't be confident that I would.
Yeah. All right, so the deployment to the Philippines, you covered about as much as you can, I think, which is fine. Within the next few years, you ended up getting medically retired. From the time that you came back from that deployment, 2014, 2015-ish, until 2017, being medically retired, walk us through that phase, and was any of it voluntary, or did they identify you need to be medically retired and we're going to push you out?
It was a crazy way that it all transpired and developed. But I was at, for the human intelligence job, I was at another SEER school, which is more PR, like advanced SEER course, which most people do, you do SEER, regular SEER school or whatever at the beginning of your pipeline. And that's kind of just a check mark, and gives you a baseline of everything. Going towards the end of my military time, it was more of like a kick in the nuts, to go back through, but like go to this advanced SEER school.
PR meaning personnel recovery kind of stuff, or what?
Public relations,
okay.
Meaning like you get rolled up in a bad country and then now they bring in the news and the media team and they're getting you to say, and
how
you're
you
like,
handle it.
So
I got you.
But what happened at this one, and it's like, man, there are no coincidences, right? It's funny to look back and see how this happened, but like the last couple hours I was in the scenario for that, I was in a cage or in a little box and my back kept throwing out all the time, ever since I got in the insider attack. Well, my L5S1 was completely blown out on the disc, but I never got an MRI or anything that would ever tell me that. So when I was in this little box and I was like, they're having me stand up and then get back in it and whatever, my back seized up and I couldn't, my back threw out to where I couldn't walk, couldn't stand. And so, I'm in scenario for like the last little couple hours of this thing and I'm telling them I need a medic, I need this, I need that. And they think that I'm like playing a scenario game and I'm like, no, dude, like admin right now, I can't stand up. Like I can't move. My back's thrown out. So anyway, we finished, thankfully it was pretty much done, but we finished that piece. And then their protocol there is if you have something like that happen, they send you to the hospital to get an MRI. And so because my unit didn't necessarily, if they start giving people MRIs, well then people are going to be, you got operators with experience that are going to be getting medically
dropping like
quick.
flies.
Yeah. So anyway, that, the L5S1 blown out, the MRI that I got when I got back to my unit, cause that SEER school was like, up in Washington. And when I got back to my unit, they're like, hey, you're on 6 weeks of light duty. And we're going to do these other checks on you. So they sent me to an ear, nose, throat appointment. They were having me do these eye tests and stuff like that. And then they saw something was off on this side. Somehow they found that I had damage in my ear and that was creating all the pressure problems that I was experiencing and all that stuff. So then like with the traumatic brain injury, the ear, the brain, the back, all those things, I was about to go again to the Philippines on a second deployment. This would be my third because my first deployment in the infantry, I went to the Philippines. So I was about to go back. The medical officer called me into his office one morning and he was like, hey, I want you to know that, I found out that you're trying to go around me and like, cause I was trying to take some of my pain meds on deployment and I was going to work it, and he told me that I couldn't do it, but I had thought I found a way to do it. And so he's like, I want you to know you're holding on to the door right now, right? You're trying to hold on. I want you to know I'm ripping you the fuck off.
Wow.
So when you walk out of this office, this isn't your job anymore. So you're not with your team. When you walk out of here, you're checking into the S3. You work in operations now while you're going through medical separation.
Wow.
And the reason why is because he's like, if I deploy you, the Marine Corps is going to look at you like you're fit for duty. And you're definitely not, I promise. And so all the things that, you deserve and your family deserves, I'd basically be cutting you off from all that if I deploy you, because then when you come back, they're going to look at you like you're 100% and you're not. Yeah. So
how was that to hear?
Oh, man. It was like, basically like NFL guys or UFC fighters or people that I know that's their whole identity, and then it's gone. They go and their locker's cleared out, or it's just over, or they get injured and can't come back or whatever. It was like that, and it was also a gift because it was like at the time it was like, man, this is like, I felt like a fish out of water. It felt like the most uncomfortable thing because I was just finding my footing being a raider, not a new guy anymore. I'm an operations chief. I'm doing this. I got some skill sets that I can contribute to the team. I felt like that was who I was. And then, I got pulled out. And I think the biggest wake up call for me, it was that conversation, but it was like in the week following when I did get put up in the S3 office and I got pulled from my team. At first, my guys on my team were like, no way, that this can't happen. Like, no. And it's like, bro, this isn't, I have no control. Like, they're not letting me, and they're like, no. But then like a couple days later, because what happened when I went to that job is now I'm not in the team anymore. So instead of being on call 24/7, where, and some days you don't sleep because we need to do X, Y, and Z, or we're training. Well, now I've got like a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 3 working in the S3 shop. So guys are looking at me that were on my team a week ago, and they start to look at me different. Like, you're not held to the same standard that I am, dude. Like, you didn't have to do all this shit last night, and you don't have to stay up, and you don't have to clean all the weapons. You don't have to go. You're free from that. Yeah, so they started looking at me like I was kind of a bitch version of myself. That's and I'm like, nah, you? And it's like, yeah. And then I even had one of my, mentors at Raider Battalion that told me like, dude, we don't look at you as a high performer. You know what I mean? I want you to know that. We actually look at you as a liability with all your medical stuff. I need you to know that. And I'm like, that really messed me up. Yeah. So a combination of these things, it was basically like God and everything was showing me like, dude, this is like, this chapter is ending and you got to like be open for whatever's next, Wow. So, that was like the wake up call moment.
Yeah. I mean, that identity of pretty much your entire adult life being wrapped into that and like a light switch being turned off is a tough thing to navigate, no doubt about it. Walk us through getting out and then ultimately kind of, what your plan was. Did it come to fruition? Did you pivot a bunch? The struggles going through it, which ultimately led to, going through ayahuasca and kind of into what you're doing now. Can you take us through that whole process?
Yeah, so I got medically retired in July of 2017. And while I was in the medical process, I had received a message on LinkedIn. And this was like right when I started my profile, got a message to come to a University of Southern California Business School, like information session. And at the time, me and my buddy Dan Smith, he's passed away 2 years ago, we were finishing our bachelor's. And we did the Norwich Strategic Studies hookup program that we got. Mm-hmm. And so we were finishing that, and I got this invite to come to this business school thing for USC. At that point, I had zero confidence, and I just in anything, because I was I was in a medical thing where I would go to 3 appointments a day and get told by everybody how I wasn't going to be able to do anything the rest of my life. And I was going to have to play in a sandbox that's like this big. And so I didn't feel very confident that I was going to go and take on the world and do any of that stuff. Because one, I got put on a bunch of different medications, which I didn't take all of them, but I took at least 8 of them or so. So I got diagnosed with all these new diagnoses. I got all this different stuff. So I was kind of just a shell of myself at that point. Got this invite to go to this thing. And when I went to the business school information session, they basically told me like, hey, we will waive you actually doing an application if you want to be in this program.
Wow.
And I was like, what? I didn't even think that they would like accept me, for whatever reason. I just had a story in my head, but they were serious. And so it's like, hey, if you're serious and you want to do this, we won't even we'll waive your application to where you're just in. And I was like, whoa, that was a wake up call. So it didn't work out that I could start that year where I could, not do the application or anything, but I ended up, because I still needed to finish my bachelor's program. and I was still getting out. So I ended up going the next year. So I got out 1 month of the Marine Corps and I started business school the next month. Wow. So it was almost like a transition course for me. However, part of me wasn't ready for it, and like being around all these new people and all this stuff. And so I had a lot of social anxiety. So I told you I went 10 years not drinking. And then all of a sudden I felt like had so much anxiety that I had to drink to mask it. And that was just the solution that I came up with. So when I started business school, I started drinking again. And basically I'm taking meds, I'm drinking. And then I basically was taking antidepressants on top of these other meds. And I started turning into like a zombie where, if you remember being in any military briefs and you got like the weak guy that's falling asleep, mm-hmm. and they're like going, dude, wake up. What's wrong with you? I've seen that a million times. Well, I would take my meds in the morning like a good veteran, take all my meds. And then by like 8:30 in the morning, I'm sitting on my couch and dozing off. And my wife's like, what's wrong with you? And so for me, that was like, when she would look at me and say that to me, I'm thinking I'm the guy in the brief. How did that become me?
Right. This
is my life. Like I'm a shell. I'm like a zombie, because normally my whole life I've had a lot of projects. I'm always busy. I got multiple, I'm a productive, creative, all those things. When I was on the antidepressants, especially, zombie, right? So I pulled the antidepressants after about a year. When I stopped taking those, I was still taking the rest of the meds. My emotions, like I was feeling everything, because I went from numbing it all to then feeling it all. And so, we started Deep in Fitness and Underwater Torpedo League literally like a month into business school. So like 2 months after being out, started these things. Within like 5 months, I'm doing NFL programs. Like I'm training NFL groups, training UFC fighters. Like within a year, I had all this cool stuff where I was like engaged in like growth, learning, like a trajectory to do something outside of the military, all that stuff. But what I was noticing is like I would get out of a big training, or I would get back to my car, and just sitting in my car or driving, I would start to have just tears would be just flowing. And I'd be thinking like, what's wrong with me?
So you wouldn't even have an emotion that was triggering that. You would just start crying.
Just life. Yeah. I was just
were you
weathered by life.
Yeah. I mean, was it a sad emotion, or was it just a physical reaction of crying?
No, it was both, but it was a lot of sadness. And it was, I've been like a zombie or a robot, not a zombie, a robot during the military career, because when you go in, you kind of check your vulnerability when you go in, and then you don't really have that. And then you get out. I mean, Marines, we go to a, 6-hour transition course at the bowling alley.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They pulled the fire alarm while I was at mine, so we ended up laying in the parking lot in the sun. It's like you could do 20 years and this is what you get for a transition seminar. Yeah. It's trash.
A high five.
Yeah. So it's not like you get your emotions back, your vulnerability back, or any of that stuff where you can actually communicate what's going on. So I was still stuck in the suffer in silence thing and not knowing how to communicate. And then I was masking with alcohol. So it was just a perfect recipe for disaster, to a point that my wife was like, you got to do something. And I had been connected with, because people in my program in my business school saw that I was red flag. And so I got connected with Marcus Capone at first, and he was just getting into this work. And then he connected me with my buddy Miles. And then Miles basically, is one of my closest friends, but he didn't quit. He just kept sending me options for different healing ceremonies. And at the time, I just kept saying no, because he's like, there's these actors that are going to be at this one in LA this weekend, and there's going to be, a Navy SEAL there and this and that. And I'm like, bro, I don't want to network with another person the rest of my life. Like, I got serious problems. I'm not going to kumbaya. I don't want to go to a veteran thing, like any of that. And he's like, well, it went on for months. And then he's like, dude, you just reject everyone. Like, what's the deal? And so I had heard Mike Tyson's testimony on the Joe Rogan about doing the toad, because that was one of the things that was offered, right? And so I had listened to that several times. And so for me, I've known of Mike Tyson my whole life, because I've seen him go through all these different phases, from being the champ to going to prison to coming back to having just like terrible time with alcohol and drugs, to then having a toad experience and basically, having this huge breakthrough. So I knew that it would do something to me. I knew it would pack a punch. So that's what I didn't have an out there where I was like, I don't know if this will work. I really believed that it would work. I just had no reference point. I didn't know anybody that had done it or anything like that.
Wow. And the toad, that's ayahuasca, or that's the 5-MeO DMT?
That's the 5-MeO.
Okay. So you did that by itself?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you do that while you were still in business school?
Yes. Yeah.
I assume did you make it through business school?
Yes.
Bubs Naturals has been supporting this show for a long time, and I've been a fan of their collagen for years. I use it every single day. But I have to tell you, genuinely fired up about what they just launched, and that's their creatine monohydrate. Now look, creatine isn't new. Most of you know what it does. It's more energy, faster recovery, lean muscle, better focus under stress and fatigue. It's one of the most researched supplements on the planet. It's recognized by the International Society of Sports Nutrition. The problem is most creatine on the market is garbage. A recent study found that roughly 50% of creatine products exceeded impurity limits, and most of it is manufactured in China with zero accountability. Bubs sources exclusively from Creapure. It's made in Germany under strict quality controls. It is the purest creatine monohydrate available. There's no fillers, there's no hype. It's 100% NSF 4Sport certified. You know exactly what you're putting in your body. Here's what makes Bubs different from any other supplement company out there. The brand is a tribute to former Navy SEAL and good friend of mine, Glenn Bub Doherty, who laid down his life saving Americans in Benghazi. Glenn stood for self-improvement and always helping others. That's the DNA of this entire brand. Bubs donates 10% of all profits to charity in his honor. That's a company worth supporting. Live better longer with Bubs Naturals. For a limited time, get 20% off your entire order with code MICDROP at bubsnaturals.com. That's BUBSnaturals.com, code MICDROP for 20% off.
Let's see. I graduated business school. I take that back. So I graduated the summer of 2019.
It's a 2-year thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then in September 9th of 2019 is when I did my first 5-MeO.
Okay. The 2-year business school, I mean, that's USC, MBA, in person, right?
Yeah, but it's a part-time.
Okay, this is like a hybrid thing? Yeah.
It's part-time. So you go to school every other weekend. And then other than that, you have assignments that you work with your group. It's pretty digestible and doable.
Yeah.
So that wasn't really the big issue. It was more so that my childhood had always been stuffed down so far in the Pandora's box that it was starting to break out. It was coming out of the cracks, and I didn't have a way to deal with it yet. And the thing that was messing me up is that my son was like becoming of the age that I started having the Peeping Tom. And so I was starting to make that connection. It was really bothering me. And then, and so I just had these different things that were, and then the insider attack thing and like, boom, waking up. And then, just death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah. So once you decide to do the 5-MeO DMT, that's by itself. It's not with the Hot Lodge or Ibogaine or anything else.
No, yeah, just by itself.
And so can you walk us through that whole process, what you experienced and what the after effects were?
Yeah, so going into it, I had been drinking again for a couple of years at that point. I was on all kinds of meds. I safely worked myself off of the meds, and I think for at least a couple of weeks before I went.
Because you have to do that, right? Like you can't.
Yeah,
be
I
on
recommend it.
anything.
Yeah. But you got to do it smartly. You can't just.
Can I ask what other meds you were on?
Yeah, I was on, just tramadol, which is like a light pain thing, but once you start taking it, you need more and more and more and more. I was on all these different nerve pain medication.
Gabapentin and stuff.
Yeah, all that. I was on even like Adderall and then Ambien to sleep. So then I was like, I needed this to focus, and then I needed this but it's like I'm not producing my own natural
Yeah.
So but yeah, so I was in total breakdown. My wife, I had a 5-MeO set up for a couple weeks after when I first went, but my wife came home one day and she's like, we can't go through another weekend, you need something this week, because I was just out of my mind. I was drunk driving. I was hanging out in the worst neighborhoods I could go to. I was in a program at UCLA Medical in LA, and I would use that to go hang out in just the most dangerous neighborhoods that I could find, and I would just walk around all night, and then I would go to my appointments in the daytime, and then I would go back at night. And they were just like, they had no solution for me, so they were going to put me in a 6-week inpatient mental health thing.
Wow.
And that's when I went up to do the 5-MeO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were living in Los Angeles?
No, I'm I'm in San Diego.
Okay.
Yeah.
While you're going to business school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'd love to get the kind of bird's eye view of the 5-MeO experience.
Really going up like a bat out of hell. I think I didn't know anything about setting intentions at the time, but that's a big part of going into any of these healing ceremonies is what's your intention and really aligning with that and grounding with that. So example could be healing, or it could be a reset, or it could be a breakthrough, or whatever it is. But for me, when I was on my way out there, I found myself, I had injury on my foot, so I hadn't ran in a while, and I was finding myself in years that I was getting out of my car just on the way, and I was running on the side of the road, and then I would start yelling, and I was just yelling, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And so for me, it was a profound experience. The first, when I got up, went into the ceremony, I have no idea who's who. I had no idea that this other girl is also healing, same as me. These are other people are the healers. This one's like an apprentice. I had no clue. And they're like, are you going to stay here tonight, brother? And I'm like, I have no clue. I literally am doing this and I don't know what's after, right? I don't know. I don't know where I'm staying tonight. They're like, it's okay. I'm taking it one thing at a time. And I remember it's before doing this, I never had any synchronicity or clues where I would pay attention to stuff. And then it's almost leading up to this, I started paying attention to all these different weird things. The last turn to get to this house where I went to do it, I wanted to turn around and go home. And maybe it was my ego was nah, you don't need this. Or I'm scared or whatever, or a combination. And there was 2 parents that rolled up, and they had a little girl in the back seat that was on the right-hand side, which is, I'm on the right-hand side, so I'm close to her. And she points and she's like that, and that was, to me, it's a sign hey, I'm not turning around, I'm going, just go. Oh. And just trust, right? Just trust fall. You don't know, mm-hmm. right? But all these things were lining up, and the healer told me this is a good hook point for me. He's like, brother, and he's from Australia, no military background, but worked with hundreds of vets. And he's like, brother, I promise this is going to be the best shoot shake that you could ever imagine in your whole life. Do you understand? And that, to me, that was like, you know, for anyone that hasn't jumped a parachute, we jump these parachutes, you land in a field, you got all this trash and leaves and branches, and that's why a lot of the paralofts that we use for jumping, they're really high buildings, so you can hang it up and then you can shake out the parachutes and you get all the stuff out. Well, when would you ever do that with your brain and your consciousness and everything in your life? And sometimes in the military, we always work with these old radios, and then sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And when they don't work, a lot of times what we have to do is just hard reset. You got to turn it function it all the way off, leave it off, and then function it all the way on. So that was what I felt like it was for me, was a hard reset. But kind of goes in a process where, you know, they talk to you about your intention, why you're there, and then you go into they clear the space. So they do like energy clearing, and they'll clear you off and kind of get all of give you like a bath basically with your energetically. And then you go into, the first one was like a handshake. So it's like a smaller dose. And all that was just showing me, you know, how to lay back, relax, and surrender and like let go. Because to me, I never understood surrendering at all. Yeah. I always thought it was quitting. And so I was like, almost when you're like, it's like, nah, I want to resist everything. I don't want to lay back and surrender and quit, you know.
Which ironically, it's like the most powerful thing you can do.
Right.
You know. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Surrender points. Like if I look back at my life, like when I met the 2 days before I met my wife, I had a full surrender point, and I was like, I don't trust females that I'm ever going to have a relationship. Right. It's just not for me. I laid it all out, and then it's boom.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so with this, it was the same thing, because driving up there, I was done. Like I said, I was screaming out, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Like blah, blah, blah. And man, if that thing didn't just give me a full 180, like new lease on life, because when I went back, I was literally like, I had my shirt off driving back home. I'm dancing. I'm like running into traffic, and I'm like, you know, what is this? Like I'm like Encino Man coming out of the ground, and I'm like, what is this concept of traffic? And it's like, well, normally you get all fed up and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But now you can see you're literally on the water, like the ocean's right there. You're in a safe container. You control your environment. What is there to stress out about? I like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so it was like a huge wake up call. It also, you know, I had a lot of fractures in all my relationships at that point. Family, neighbors. I was starting wars with everyone, you know, and fracturing relationships. It's basically operator syndrome 101. Yeah. You know, you break down to a point, you can't fix it or express yourself or communicate, and then you suffer in silence long enough and you burn your whole life to the ground. That's where I was at. And this thing basically gave me a new lease. And to give you like an explanation, like when I went back, because at UCLA Medical, the program I was at, we had like 35 people on staff. And when you're there, it's 35 with one. So they saw my records, and they saw all my neurological scores and all my stuff before and after I did the 5-MeO. When I came back and I did it the second time and I tested out, literally the doctors were crying when they were giving me my results, and they could not believe what they saw in front of them.
That's incredible.
Because I was nobody would have wanted to be around me the way that I was showing up in that.
I can imagine. How long did the 5-MeO, if you want to call it a trip, last, and what did you see?
It lasted, you know, the overall ceremony lasts for a couple hours, but each individual can last for 20 minutes up to like an hour or so. I would say in the what I saw was, you know, because I was basically, I had this thought that I didn't want to be here anymore. You know, that was part of what I was dealing with. That, or at least I thought that. I thought I didn't want to be here anymore. I thought that, you know, I wanted to check out. I thought this was too much for me to deal with, whatever it was. And what it showed me is, if you remember that show Scared Straight, you know what I'm talking, where they take the kids that think that they're bad, or that kids that want to be gang members, they take them to prison, and they show them the real gang members, and they're like, you know, is this what you want, right? You sure you want that?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I don't want that. Well, for me, it was, it took me into that. So on my big dose that I did, it showed me that, you know, this is what you wanted. So this is the way that your life played out. It showed me a car accident, and it was self-inflicted, and there was a suicide note, and there was all these different things. And so I got to experience my funeral, the energy around my family and the loss that they had. And I got to experience everybody's loss for what my actions created. And that was the first part of it. And then the weird part was, the second part of it was, it also showed me all these positives, every seed that I planted, all of the impact that I made with people, all the training that I did for people, what it meant to them in their life, you know, all these different things. And it showed me, like, even like this email that you sent this guy, and this and this and this. So this was like how your life ended. This is how everyone's reaction and emotion and the loss that they felt. And then here's all the positive things that you've left behind, and now your life's over. And so for me, because I didn't have anyone with me there, I didn't know anyone that was there, I had no reference point for what it was, I literally thought my life was over. I thought I was in the afterlife. You know, if you would have held my keys and said, hey, your car's outside, you're going to be driving in a few hours, I didn't understand. I was in a rose garden, and I felt like I was like a little baby, and I was crawling around, and I was in this rose garden, and I'm like, I didn't know what to believe, but it was just like a total kind of rebirth moment, you know, where I kind of died and was born again in that experience, you know. And it was a personal experience that was basically, it felt like a Nike commercial, the level of production that I had, but it was all built by my consciousness, and it was specifically a message specifically for me.
That's fascinating. And again, just one more different experience that I've heard detailed from somebody who's gone through that you know, contrasts from every other one that I've heard about. What was your life like in the normal day-to-day routine after that? And then how did that lead to you ultimately going through ayahuasca on top of it?
So I came back, and my day-to-day, that's when my life really got interesting, because it's like I said, I was, the only reference point I had was listening to Mike Tyson and Joe Rogan's podcast. Well, when I finished the ceremony, one of the healers told me, hey, you need to listen to this Mike Tyson episode and build your vocabulary, because you had a very powerful experience, and you need to build your vocabulary so you can share it with other people. You're going to be an ambassador to the medicine because you had a profound experience, right? And it was like a big one. You had a big one, right? So I'm like, okay, but he's referencing the Mike Tyson one. And then when I get back to California, I have like 3 different people or 4 different people tell me, hey, you need to hit up this guy in LA, because he's doing all this stuff that, you know, is complementary to everything that you're working on with like human performance and this and that. But it was like, before, if I would have had 3 different people hit me up and they're like, hey, you need to get with so-and-so, right? You need to meet with this guy. It would just be like a nuisance. Be like, this is annoying. Why is everyone? But when I got back from the 5MEO and 3 different people tell me to meet with someone, I'm like, nah, man, that's a sign, dude. You know what I mean? Like in a week, so my only job is to meet that person. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, but my first priority when I got back was healing my relationships and my family first and foremost. And then, but yeah, things. So, I mean, like within a month of me coming back, I'm at Tyson Ranch with Mike Tyson, like there with him doing a podcast. And then like got brought in and invited to like basically be at Tyson Ranch and start my own podcast. This is right before COVID hit. When COVID hit, all that podcast stuff went out the window there, and he started boxing again. He got actual fights. So then all the podcaster stuff moved to the side. But it was like, to me, it was like from listening to his podcast to then having 3 people tell me to connect with this person. And when I connected with that person, they're like, I want to bring you to Tyson Ranch. It's like, this stuff almost doesn't even seem real. You know, the biggest thing that I did get though from that first toad was I haven't drank alcohol since that. And I haven't done any prescription pills either since the toad. That's incredible. That was 2019 in September.
So 7 years almost. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did things go back to being not as positive? And is that why you ultimately did the ayahuasca journey, or was it just trying to continue the progress?
So and for anyone listening, there's like a whole medicine wheel on this. So there's all different types of plant medicines that you can get into or that you can get access to that can create transformations or breakthroughs, and they all kind of operate a little bit differently, or, you know, the experience is different. For me, when I got back, you know, that's when I, at the UCLA Medical, they told me, one of the feedback points they told me when they were basically like, you should never go to a talk therapist ever again in your life. That would be counterproductive.
Really?
Yeah. They said, for you need to find an integration therapist, which I didn't know what that was, but I was getting acupuncture because my neck was blown out, and I was getting acupuncture. And this is right after they told me about the integration therapist, which I didn't even think about it because I don't know what that is. But I'm getting acupuncture, and there's a page on the wall that says, you know, integration therapist, you know, Dr. Dexter. I'm like, you have an integration therapist here? She's like, oh yeah, she's amazing. So I'm like, okay, well, so I got an appointment with her because I was told I need to do integration therapy. Well, when I met her, she's a medium. When I met my therapist, and this was right after the toad. So she's like, you know, did you know you have 7 books inside of you that need to come out? And that was when I had written 0 books, right? And I'm like, no. And then she's telling me all this stuff about myself. So.
And it was spot on?
It was spot on. But she was like, you know, when I first started working with her, she's like, you know, don't think of them right now, but you've got like 3 traumatic things that you haven't healed from when you were 7 to when you were this. You know, and by the time I was leaving the office, they started popping up, but it's like stuff I hadn't told anyone. And part of it was there were things that I didn't want to heal because I had this weird story in my head or in my consciousness that was like, that's what makes me special. Like, that's what gives me an edge to do some of the things different, is because I have all that trauma and these horrible things, right? So I don't want to heal all of it. I want to heal some of it, but I got to keep some to give me that edge. And it was like total bullshit. So she basically, you know, I went from like having this, now I have a new lease on life, to her pulling me back into the trench. Cause like when I was healing and going through those therapies of like dealing with those traumatic things from when I was young, it felt like I was in it, like I was there. And I was kind of upset because I'm like, dude, I just had this powerful thing and now you bring me right back in. But it's just a point that the maintenance always continues. And maybe your first healing just puts the spotlight on all these things. And now you can start to, at least I have awareness of it. Now I can start to do something about it and at least make some positive movement in the right direction of where I intend to go. Right. And so, but that was, so I got Michelle at that point, my integration therapist, and she, you know, I've gone through, you know, it's been almost 7 years now, right? But to your point, the ayahuasca came from my wife had gone and done ayahuasca ceremonies, and so for my birthday one year, this was like maybe 2 years after the toad, she got me a ayahuasca ceremony. So for a weekend, I went out and like I went under it's my birthday, this is a gift, it's going to be a great experience. And I go and just get my ass kicked, right? Where it's like, what I experienced from it, one is, you know, it's a ceremony, they kick off the ceremony, you go around, everybody drinks some ayahuasca, but then within like 20 minutes, it's kicking into your system. and your body is starting to activate, and like it releases, it purges toxins and things from your system. So for me, it was the first time where I actually threw up or like purged, and it was it felt like the all of the stuff from the burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan, and all the pollution from being around like all the weird stuff that gets burned, that it was coming out of my pores. Like I could smell it, I could feel it, and when I was throwing up, it was like, I might have told you if you told me before, like, do you want to purge? Do you want to like throw up while you're doing it? It's like, no, I don't want any of that. That's weird. But it was like, as I was throwing it up, and felt like it was like all the toxins coming out, I was like, get everything out. Like it felt like liberating. And so you can, I've had like, you can purge with crying, with laughing, with shaking, with, I've had like saliva purge where you're just like salivating over and over again, and you're spitting or whatever. It's like, it can come in any way, but if you're getting some kind of a reaction, that's probably a sign that your nervous system or your body or your consciousness or your soul or something needed a shakeout. So, but to answer your question, man, like, it's been a journey, and it's never over. There's always it's always maintenance, and basically that's like setting up in the mornings, doing the intentional, picking the stones, having quiet time, doing the workout, or like getting the blood flowing, mobility, all these things, setting myself up for success in every way. It keeps me moving in the right direction. I had 2 years ago, within 7 days, two of my buddies shot themselves. And it was like, both of them I was overseas with, one of them a lot. And then the other one, like, I met my wife at his retirement party. We did our undergrad together, Dan Smith. And then the other guy, I was in the Philippines and doing like the intel stuff where it was just me and him and a driver, and we were together all the time. They both shot themselves in the face within 7 days. And, it was like 2 weeks. Me and my partner Don got invited to go on Shark Tank.
Oh, really?
So we were in that. It was just like random because we didn't apply. We just got invited. And like 2 weeks before that, the two buddies shoot themselves within 8 days. And so when that happened, like, I mean, it felt like I'd never done any healing. You know what I mean? When that second, especially the second guy, because the first guy tore me inside out. The second guy was like, I was basically stressing out on my kids. My wife was like, hey, I'm going to get you a hotel on the beach tonight to go. And so I went to this hotel on the beach, and basically I didn't even touch my room. I laid in the grass outside all night, and the security guards were coming up, and they're like, dude, you can't be out here. We're going to send you. I was like, bro, I'm not moving. Like this, here's a little snapshot of what I'm dealing with. I'm not leaving here. You know what I mean?
And they were cool with it?
They were cool with it, yeah. And so I ended up having my birthday party that year there. But I had a profound experience during that whole thing. And I've had several profound experiences since then where some of my buddies that pass away, they're like, they're in like a QRF, they're overhead, they're circling, and they're always in support. And so it's almost like I could call them in, when I'm, they're part of them is gone, but part of them is still here. And it's like, whatever it is, I don't know if it's the frequency, I don't know if it's their spirit, but, going back to my therapist, so she's a medium. When the second guy killed himself, I set up a therapy appointment, and I went in. I didn't tell her anything that happened. I walked in, and I sat down on the couch, and she was like, your buddies need you to know that there's worse things in this world than dying. And I'm like, it just like started hitting me really hard. And then she's like, and they also want you to know that they haven't lost any affinity for you. meaning like there's no love or like your friendship and everything. It's still 100% there, And so, but her saying that without me telling her what happened, it basically just like, I don't know. It was every emotion at once, but.
Who is this woman? I mean.
Yeah, it's my therapist.
I mean.
I call her my coach, but she's my therapist.
Yeah, I mean, like it makes me want to sit down with her and see what she comes up with, like that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So she had a pretty heavy inclination as to what happened. What else happened during that session? Was anything else that was super profound that way?
It's going through experiences where your friends or your buddies or people that you're overseas with or people that you're in really, challenging situations with, and they made it through that or whatever it is, and then now that it feels like they checked out or they quit or they did this or they killed themselves or they, whatever that there's, I think the first times of dealing with it, it's easy for your mind to judge or like to come up with those kind of judgments or accusations. I think for this experience and like, what I experienced with Michelle during that session is like, that was a kind of turning point for me to like release all judgment on them. Cause I don't know what their day to day was.
Hence there are worse things on this
exactly
earth than dying.
Yep. And I don't even fully understand what that means.
Yeah.
But I can start to
rationalize.
If you're in hell, I don't know.
Only way out kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's powerful, man. Before we get any further into that, I just don't want to forget, with the ayahuasca stuff, were there visions with that too, or was it different in terms of how you
it was very different, and it was very interesting because it was at night, right, where I did the toad during the day, but with the Aya, you could basically, they call it the grandmother spirit. So it's like got a feminine kind of like elder kind of energy that comes from it, where you can ask it questions. And this is where, like, because I had like a notepad, so I was asking it questions and it was giving me direct answers, and I was writing notes. And I had my little, light, my night light, and my pen, and like my electrolytes, and my pillow, and all the like my little comfort things. But I could sit there and like, you got your mask on, and it's at night, and like a sleep mask, and you're basically going in, but then you're asking it, and it's saying, or it'll show you something, and then you'll ask it a question, show me something that I can't see myself with this. Why are you showing me this? What's important of this? And then like it'll show you. And so for me, like it basically showed me all of these inauthentic relationships and people that I had around me and things that I needed to clean up. So it gave me, and this is my birthday weekend. I'm going in thinking this is going to be, I already did the hard stuff, which is the 5-MeO.
Yeah.
Now I'm coming and doing this. This is like,
which it's like 10 times harder, right?
Well, it's,
or just different.
I would say different. Cause like the 5-MeO can be more, turbulent, like it's like when a plane goes crazy and then it like levels out. That's what it can be like a little bit. I don't think of it like that as much anymore. But the Aya is more so like it lasts a long time. And then you're in the room until the last person, like until everyone's done. That's when they close it out that night, and then you go back. So for me, like the first time I did it, I was done hours before everyone else, and I was just wanting to go back to my room. And I'm like...
So you've done ayahuasca more than once?
Well, it was a weekend,
okay.
And it was multiple.
Oh, I gotcha.
Right? I would say, but that was my only experience of it. Some people have done it 100 times. The thing, and I'd say the toad has been the biggest impact for me, the 5-MeO. And then I also work with the cactus as well, like different cactus medicine. And I feel like that's another big heart opener. But outside of plant medicine, so for anybody that's interested, usually the way that I see it is, if you got something going on, where you're starting to search healing, and then you get access to it, well, it's like right time, right place, right action. You can't force someone into it, and you should never do that. But I will say that, if you don't have access to plant medicine and you don't have access to a safe provider or whatever else, another thing that you can do to get a reset is detox yourself from your phone, your computer. And I've, for the last 2 years, I've done like a silence retreat, or like a sensory deprivation or whatever, where there's no talking and you're there for 4 days and you don't use your phone and you're not on computer. And for me, that the divine silence and the reset of no technology and just constant information coming in, that alone is like a healing ceremony.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't, you don't have to have access to that. If you just there's ways that you can reset yourself and do so, like in nature and these other things. So,
I mean, I love the experiences that you've had, what you've taken from them, and your ability to communicate, the outcomes. For the listener who, let's just say hypothetically, best case scenario, does have full unfettered access to any and all plant medicine, and I suspect that your answer is going to say or be to a certain extent, well, it depends. But let's say that there's a significant childhood and or adult trauma, maybe even both. They've not experienced or done any experience with any type of plant medicine. Is there this is what you would recommend to walk through in this order type of protocol for that person?
Absolutely. I love going back to the underwater training, or getting anyone to change their relationship with any fear that they have. I look at crawl, walk, run, fly, the building block approach. And so for me, to take someone that has never had access to any of it and they're starting out, I would recommend DMT, like the bark of the acacia tree, which in the Bible, it's the tree of life. But they use the bark to create NN-DMT, which is completely way lighter experience than the 5-MeO. And to me, it's for someone that's never done it. Like I've seen a lot of, that's the best starting point for other people, because for me, I went straight to the toad, and that was just like, dude, in 10 seconds, you're leaving your body and your life in 10 seconds. You know what I mean? I think that can be turbulent, for people. So sure. I don't like to put people through turbulence. I would rather see them crawl, walk, run. And so for the changa, or the bark of the DMT, what I see is people if they haven't had a good night of sleep in years, or they're just so wound up with their nervous system, or someone just, they had a buddy commit suicide, and whatever it is, all these things, they're all wound up, and they're also kind of scared, and it's a fear of the unknown, because they've never done this before. They've heard weird stuff, whatever. And so it's like, hey, let's just come in, relax, you know what I mean? And just do a light DMT hit, and then you'll just see their whole body relax. Oh, and it's like, that was nothing. Right. And it's like, okay. And then not turbulent at all. It just puts you into relaxation. Then you start feeling it in your body and your cells. And so that, to me, that would be the thing. Now, if you have access to everything all the time, right, then does that mean you're doing this once a week? Or are you doing it once a month? Are you doing it? For me, I only do it when it lines up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I guess what I'm curious about is an actual step-by-step protocol. Maybe that doesn't exist, but again, and I know that this is maybe not even realistic, but in a best case scenario, somebody who has a super traumatic experience or experiences that they're struggling with, and they have the ability to do any of it, all of it, is there an order you would do it? Would you do all of it in a certain order? Would you only start with this and see how it goes? And then if that goes well, then go to this? Like, is there a kind of a roadmap in that way for all of this?
So the roadmap is really create your own adventure. You know, there are organizations like VETS or, you know, these organizations like Ambio that do the ibogaine, and then on the end they do the 5-MeO. You know, so there are processes and programs in place that have specific protocols like that. I would say that, you know, in general, the process is, and if they're single, it's different than if they're married. Because if they're married, their partner needs to be involved in the program too. Not meaning they're going to come out and do it, but they need to be involved. And there's 3 steps. So there's pre-integration, right? There's the ceremony or the healing, and then there's the post-integration, right? And so it's basically like, typically before you do any of these, you're doing a dieta, or you're like fasting, or you're weeding out all of the unhealthy things that you put in your body or that you watch or you listen to, and you're cleaning all of that out like for at least a week. And then you go into this thing with an intention of like, hey, here's all the things I want to leave behind that aren't serving me. Just for example, this is what I want to leave behind. This is what I want to take forward. This is my focus. This is my intention. So then you come and do the healing ceremony. Okay. The biggest parts are that the front, the pre-work and the focus and the intention, and then the post integration, because the post integration is like, okay, that was like, you know, a mind bender or whatever. It was transformational, crazy experience. Okay. Well, now how are you going to take that into your life? What are you getting rid of that didn't serve you before? How are you showing up differently?
Yeah. I suppose the reset is meaningless if it doesn't induce change.
Meaningless.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't shift,
if you go right back into the same patterns, you're going to run into the same problems.
And the same environments too.
Right.
So it's like, hey, yeah, I'm going to do this, but I'm still going to hang out with my buddies at the bar. No. And you know, there's something I want to make sure to share is like, I had a meditation coach from Australia, and she told me the story about lobsters. You know how lobsters, you know, transform when they want a bigger shell? They want to.
Oh, well, they break out of it, right? I mean.
Yeah, but they like go into hiding. They like, you know, they're with all their lobster buddies, and they got to go under a rock for like a week or two and leave everyone to go through an incubation process to regrow, right? And it's like, bro, if you want to incubate yourself, don't keep putting yourself in the same environment. You know, if you need a new shell, you got to hide under a rock for a couple of weeks. You got to change your environment or whatever it is you got to do whatever it takes, right? But the whole point is we get to this point where we're going to come to a healing ceremony. We got all these things that aren't working for us that we've acknowledged either by ourselves or with a coach or with our significant other or whatever. We come out to this thing that all these people have put thousands of man hours into doing, right? And now you're here, and it's like, you know, there's a lot of intentionality and everything that's packed in. And then you go to that, and then you go right back to, you know, then you go right back, you know, to your phone and your email and to everything. And they're the same people. And it's like, no. What are the drag sources? What are the limitations and the things holding you back from being your optimal self and your highest potential of what you want to see in your life? Okay. And then how are we going to let those things go? Because we don't need anything that we want to leave behind. It's just like you're traversing up a mountain, right? It's like, hey, my pack's getting really heavy. There's a lot of stuff in here that don't serve me anymore. Let me throw my metals off the side of the cliff. It just got lighter. It feels good, right? So what can I leave behind? What can I shed? You know, what skin can I shed? What things can I leave behind that aren't serving me anymore so I can open up possibility or move into a new thing? A lot of us too, in this job, the goal is always to become a subject matter expert, right? Be the thing. It's like, I got 10,000 man hours training people around the water in the last 20 years. I'm an expert. I'm one of the best in the world, right? I'm a black belt in that. No, but like when I become that and I'm an expert, that means I know everything and I have full I'm not in full possibility that anything can happen because I know so much. where it's like I think it's a Lao Tzu quote, but it's like, in the expert's mind, there are a few options possible, but in the beginner's mind, there's endless possibility, right? And so it's like, how can we be more in a beginner's mindset coming out of this into our integration, and then what are the uncomfortable conversations that we're willing to have? You know what I mean?
It's such a fascinating and powerful testimony to that whole process and what's possible. I love it, and it's just so incredible to see the leaps and bounds that these protocols have enabled in veteran recovery, and not just in veterans, but anybody with traumatic experiences that they're struggling with, and its ability to reset those neural pathways and completely change people's lives. I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
That aspect of your journey. I know it's there's a lot of emotion wrapped into it. Permission to Heal book. You got 6 more, I guess, on top of this that you got to knock out. But for your first book, what inspired it? Where did it come from? Why do you want to write it? And what are you trying to get across with it?
So me and my partner Don actually came out with another book. It was during COVID, and it was the free operating system that I mentioned into a guidebook or a manual, because we were having a lot of the athletes that we trained that were having the breakthroughs at the pool, but they were also using the free operating system or the acronym and the training methodology to like create impacts in their life, like having conversations with their coaches that were stealing from them or this or that, changing things that weren't working and replacing them with things that were, right? And they were having a lot of breakthroughs. So during COVID, we were on lockdown, a lot of the pools shut down. So we had one of our friends, Bethany Marshall, that we were training with in New York. And she was like, hey, do you want to turn this into a published document? Because she worked at Morgan James at the time. So she helped us publish that thing during COVID. All the bookstores were like, it was during lockdown and stuff, so we didn't do like a book launch or anything, but it was a good experience. And basically that was the first book, but it was a guidebook. Didn't do any kind of a book tour or book launch, but got a rep of doing it. And then after that, Bethany was in town in California, and she was basically like, I had some experiences at that point recently where, I was meeting with some of my mentors that I looked up to so much, and, they're in masks, and and so I was sharing stuff with them about my life or about certain situations, that I've shared more of in the last couple of years, but I was sharing this stuff that nobody really heard of at that point. And so they were, I was having these mentors and stuff that I really looked up to, and they're like, dude, what you just shared with me, man, like that, I really appreciate you sharing that. And like, you need to tell your story. You need to so I was having a lot of that, but there's also a stigma around soft guys writing books. So I didn't want to write a book. So it was like, but my friends are also committing suicide. I got a lot of friends in breakdown, mental health issues myself, but I felt like I got this new lease on life. So some people that go through the plant medicine, they feel like they go into the healing side of it, right? Where they start figuring out how to serve medicine. They work with, get apprenticeship, all that stuff. For me, I never got any of that. Like I was supposed to go start serving. It was like, you're going to be an ambassador, right? And share information and positive information. And, at certain times, check people to make sure people have good intentions if they're serving or whatever it is. But I really felt a calling after the especially that first 5 MEO to spread the word, because for me, I felt like I was either dying or going to jail at that point. And the jails are filled with people like that. If everyone in the jails had gotten access to this, I think there'd be a lot less, right? But I felt like it was my duty or my responsibility to kind of pay it forward and create a ripple effect in any way that I could. It's been a process and a journey, but it's taken a lot of different evolutions. So when we started it, the book was obstacles equals opportunities. And then it was breakdowns into breakthroughs. And then it was unlocking flow around all the water work. And then we got a publisher, Wiley. That's like been a really good experience working with them. But they came online like about 6 months ago. And then now I've had this huge team that's been doing all kinds of stuff. So they felt the heart of the message was more permission to heal than unlocking flow. And one of my best friends, Dom Cruz, told me a couple of weeks ago, he's like, and he's just retiring from UFC, and there's a lot of parallels from military transition and professional sports fighting transition. So we support each other in that way. But he's like, yeah, dude, the unlocking flow is safe for you. He's like, permission to heal is not as safe, but that means you can have a lot of impact with it, right? Yeah. So that's the hope, and the intention is, for any of my buddies that aren't here anymore, if they could have read it, it would have made a positive impact on them. And then anybody else that's in that situation, including like myself, because I'm a resistance guru. I resist everything, right? And so it's like, I'm not listening to anybody tell me about healing, and I'm not going to a ceremony, and I'm not. So if I can be what's missing for that person that's like me, because I'm complete, like, I come from, total dysfunction, total chaos, right? And so if I can go through it and I can find a way, I feel like I need to do what I can to be a good steward to others and make it happen.
I love it, man. What does permission to heal actually mean? Like, how would you synopsize the book?
So there's a stigma, and I mentioned it, suffer in silence was like a big thing in the military and in the Marines and all that stuff. I think the permission to heal, I've had so many experiences where, it's like listening to Mike Tyson talk about his experience, his testimony. That gave me permission to go and, have possibility and whatever it could create for me. I've been in, I'm in a program at the University of Miami where we're like 90% SOF veterans, and they've all done plant medicine. And we were all recruited for this program by my buddy Miles. So it's like everybody in that room, and what I've experienced in there is there's a few people that don't have that background and that haven't done the healing. And they thought, because we're all SOF guys and, there's a lot of tier 1 guys and all that stuff, they thought that their trauma doesn't compare to any of our trauma, and that they're like imposter syndrome and all that stuff. We did a exercise in our class where we all shared what was the most traumatic thing that happened to us and how we're coping with it. And basically, man, it started in the back of the room, which is like me and my buddies, and everybody that started just went straight for the jugular and was like, hey, this happened to me, when I was little and got abandoned or this or that, and this is what I've been dealing with. And this is the way that it, I'm coping with it. And this is the way it kind of limits me and whatever else. And so that by us, that started, and we went deep with it, and we were very vulnerable and authentic and just transparent. Like, we took all the armor off and like, hey, this is what it is. That it unlocked, like, literally, people were sobbing when they were sharing their story.
I bet.
And it got to like, the non-military personnel in there and all of the things that we got to hear them share. It's like, bro, everyone's trauma is equal. Like,
and it's all relative.
Yeah.
It's comparative to what else you've experienced in your life. So to me, whatever the worst thing that you've experienced in your life and what impact it has on you, comparison's the thief of joy. You mentioned that regarding the coin holder. It's kind of the same thing, is that, and again, like I find myself making a lot of parallels to kids, just looking back on, raising my children and thinking about things I could have done better. And that's one thing that I find routinely stands out, which is being dismissive to what they're going through, because it's not a big deal to me, so it shouldn't be a big deal to you. Well, hang on a second. It's like, to them, all they have is the entirety of their life to compare it to, and for a 13-year-old, something that wouldn't even make me think twice in a day is the worst thing they've ever experienced.
Right.
And I think that's really important for people to both, people who are maybe hesitant to share or be vulnerable about something that's bothering them, and also the people listening that maybe would cast judgment to those that, turn it into a comparison of, well, my trauma is worse than yours, kind of thing, and trying to out-victim each other. And I just think that perspective is one that gets lost a lot and should be focused on harder.
100%.
So the book comes out, what's the actual date?
The book comes out next Tuesday, July 28th.
The 28th, okay. So this may come out that same day, actually. Do you have any copies with you?
I got it. I should have put it out, right?
Yeah, well, we can break it out here and at least show it on camera. But I'll definitely read it and we'll promote it on the show here for sure. But man, it sounds amazing. For the listener or viewer that feels overwhelmed in everything that they're hearing, because there's so many pathways, there's so many approaches, there's talk therapy, there's the medium therapist that you worked with, there's all this plant medicine, there's all these different protocols. Is there a starting point, for somebody who's done nothing and wants to try to face their demon or their trauma or whatever, that you would recommend? Like how do you even start to entertain what my best path is?
I think a great starting point is an accountability partner and a good buddy, one that's gonna hold you accountable. I think accountability is love. Like someone's willing to hold you accountable, they actually care. They're spending their time and energy and bandwidth on holding you accountable for something you care about, right? So I think accountability can be looked at as a drag sometimes, but it's like that's where all the juice is. And having accountability systems is kind of what keeps me like grounded and getting feedback from others. There's something called a Johari window, but it's very hard for us to see our complete self. So it's very important that we have people that can give us direct and honest feedback and show us where our blind spots are at. You know what I mean? Like, hey, how am I showing up, whatever? And they're like, dude, you haven't smiled once and you got like a resting bitch face all the time. I'm like, all right, well, at least I know that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It reminds me of boundaries in relationships, is that it's uncomfortable to be the one putting it in place. It's probably even worse for the person hearing it. But what's key is that, well, you wouldn't be putting it in place and even taking the time and the uncomfortability of that confrontation to put it in place if you didn't care enough about the relationship to want to save it,
Absolutely.
And protect it.
Absolutely.
And I think that accountability friend is the same thing, is that, hey, it's like, I don't want to be the one telling you this, but I am, because I care about you enough to where like I want us to continue to have a good relationship. I don't want to just say, I don't care, dude, just piss off or whatever. And I think that perspective is helpful for both.
Yeah. And, if someone if you feel stuck, or you're listening and you feel overwhelmed, or there's too many tabs open, or your hard drive feels full, take a blank piece of paper and write down any drag source or anything that holds you back, or anything that frustrates you, whether it's a person, a place, a thing, a habit, and outline all of those things, and then start to remove anything, right? Start to declutter your life in any way that you can. Declutter your spaces. If you have clothes that you don't wear, give them away to Goodwill, like all these different things. I declutter everything all the time, but the scientific term less is more. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed because we got too many options, too many choices, and way too much information coming in. Sometimes the first step for someone is an information diet. Hey, dude, turn the radio off, turn the news off, turn the TVs. Like, I don't have TVs in my house, but it's like low information diet, right? Once you start to do that, it's like the time I can see everything in my life the most clear and all the chess pieces is when I'm at that retreat. I haven't talked to anyone in 4 days, and I'm crystal clear. I've already gone through all of the spinning out in my head the first 2 days, and now I can see everything, right?
Yeah, the paradox of choice is absolutely real. Air Hunger documentary you've got coming up focuses on breath work. What can you tell us about that, and when does it air? And
yeah, so that all of these things were kind of fell in our lap their air hunger thing, thankfully with the underwater training and the journey that we've had the last 9 years, like we gotten to work with pretty much every high level professional sport, different athletes, teams. So there's a lot of pattern recognition, and there's a lot of things that we've learned that are kind of takeaways that we distill and provide in air hunger. It shows a lot of Deep End Fitness and Underwater Torpedo League in the sport that showcases a lot of the athletes and the community and everything. But the power of breath work, it showcases everything from, people dealing with mental health to professional athletes and everything in military and everything in between, how people are utilizing breath work and breathing techniques to elevate their performance and also to help them recover, and then people that are struggling, sometimes like all we focus on is the performance aspect. Oh, I need to compartmentalize everything so I can drive harder. I need to perform. I need to move faster. I need to do more. Well, we also, like at a certain point, your performance is directly correlated to your recovery, right? It's like, we train some of the best baseball players and they have games almost every day of the year. So their only recovery from like the adrenal fatigue and all the shit from all the bells and whistles and noises and everyone yell at them, they only have like 8 to 10 hours or 12 hours a day at the most to recover and reset before the next day. So recovery becomes the key, right? If they want to show up better than the person next to them or on the team across from them the next day, the only thing they can do is recover more, right? So recovery is key, making sure you don't have like a bunch of things in your life that aren't serving you, especially for service members and veterans. We serve everybody. We're always in service until we can't be anymore because our cup's empty, and then you're trying to serve people and you're in breakdown. So be mindful of that too, because when you get out, you go from having no boundaries to your point, having to set healthy boundaries. How do I do that? I've just served everyone. I've literally lived out of a backpack my whole adult life and just gone to any country or school that I've been sent to and been with any team that I got assigned to. And now I'm free, right? And so, it's important. And if you're setting healthy boundaries with people, because if you don't care, you just block someone or you say, hey, bye, right? There's a lot of people on the planet. I don't need this. But if you're setting a boundary, it's like, hey, I care about our relationship. This is a way that I feel it can work better and it'll be more healthier for both of us.
Yeah. Amen. When does it come out, and is it streaming, or what will it be on?
Yes. So right now, Air Hunger is on Amazon Prime.
So it's already out.
It's out in the Netherlands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the director.
Why do they get it first?
Because the director's from there.
Ah, lame.
Yeah. So it comes out here at the end of September in the U.S. So make sure to go check that out.
And it'll be on Amazon Prime.
Mm-hmm.
Both super exciting, and can't wait to digest both of them. How has fatherhood changed your perspective, both as a man, and also how has your healing journey changed your perspective on fatherhood?
So my strongest why throughout my adult life was always just make my grandparents proud. And I could always check in with myself, even if I was like on restriction, and had no rank, and I'm, in whatever country, and I'm doing security on a vehicle. Meaningless, right? Am I making my grandparents proud? Yes. They're always, it doesn't matter. They always had a story in their head that I was doing huge things, even though it was like, hey, I lost my rank again. They're still proud. I don't know how it worked, but they loved me being in the Marines, and it always made them proud. At this point, like my kids and my wife I want to make them proud. I want to set an example for my kids and all that. So it really creates a strong why, because, I've experienced, I will always do more for them than I will for myself. And so that's a strong come from. And then I always thought that it's a top-down thing where the parent teaches everything to the kid. But what I've experienced is like my kids teach me so much on a daily basis that it feels like it's more coming from them than it is from me. But how the healing is impacted or how it's changed is, I feel like, unwitting or unaware of it before, when I was all messed up, it's a negative ripple effect to everybody around me when I was in that state, especially my kids, right? And even if they were really young, they could still feel it. Where it's like, now that I'm in the healing work, they get a positive ripple effect, right? And they feel that too. And I can see that. And so I'm mindful of that, how I show up around them and making sure that I keep doing all of the maintenance and all of the work that it takes for me to do. It sounds like it's a lot of work, but I would say for me, it's a little bit more because of the traumatic brain injury. So I got to do the brain treatments and do this stuff that serves my brain health, but then also do the healing and the stuff that serves my emotional and mental health.
Yeah. Wow. Man, I love it. It's been an absolute treat for me to be able to finally meet you and sit down with you and interview you. The last question I have is, as we sit here today and you look back at your entire life, what are you the most grateful for?
Relationships. And for people, sticking with me, and my grandparents never giving up on me, and my wife staying with me, and just all of the amazing circle of friends, and 360-degree security of all the amazing mentors, and just really grateful to God for being alive, and even when I wasn't grateful to be alive, that I'm still here, and I've had a couple really close calls, and it just makes me more humble and grounded, and also more empathetic towards others. And so definitely it's okay if you feel stuck. It's okay if things are challenging. There's all different types of seasons in life. You can move through it. Don't isolate yourself. And the biggest, one of the things when I have a hard day is I think like, okay, well, even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? How could I be right once or twice today? And that's it, right? Just give yourself some grace. Isolate the problem, shrink the problem, let go of the problem, surrender whatever it is that's not working. And then, we didn't really talk about it, but I get to work on some cool projects, so outside of the performance coaching and deep end and all that stuff, I work with Atrius Development Group, which my best friend started. It's a firearm technology company. So I've been in that. We've about 15 months. It's one of the most disruptive, fastest growing companies in the firearm space.
That's the drop-in.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it?
I would just say that it's been the craziest experience of any company that I've worked with the last 15 months.
Yeah.
Huge positive impact with the 2A community. And we really got to experience it this year at SHOT Show, because that was our first big event around everyone. Yeah, it's a pretty wild experience.
Yeah. And what's the website for people to check that out?
Atrius.dev.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to check that out. Apparently I lied. That's not my last question. I do have one more for you. You mentioned God and faith a few different times. Where would you say your walk in your faith is right now? And is it something that has been a part of your life for its entirety, or is this something that you came into as an adult?
It's I'm one of those people that believe there should be a religion or a spirituality option for every person on the planet. I don't like being put in a box or a cookie cutter or anything, but when I was living in my closet, I had bad experiences at church. And my priest was out of his mind. So I had some just traumatic experiences, and I went through retreats and stuff with this priest when I was 12 years old. So on top of all the trauma and stress I had at home, this was my church experience. And so my priest, I don't want to go too far into it, but he was a certified mime and a clown. on the side.
That's
and so
a strange
we would go
combination.
on these retreats with him. And he had 2 of his kids that had committed suicide, so he's literally out of his mind and just completely in the red all the time. And he would give us a Bible lesson, and then he would leave the room, and then he would come back as a clown or as a full-blown mime, fully make up the whole thing, and just like with the most stress and everything, play it all out. And so it was literally like a horror show. And so that whole experience for me was a wake-up call growing up, where I was like, you know, everything that is the most challenging stuff, it seems like a lot of people lean on church and that kind of thing. For me, that wasn't an option. So I kind of found God in my closet, you know, because there was nights that were really long and scary, and he's banging or he's knocking on the window and he's breathing or he's making little noises. And I mean, that's the boogie, man. That's really scary for a little kid to deal with when their parents aren't supporting with that problem, you know? So it basically reinforced to me that it's a direct connection. And that was when I was like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And so when I've been at church, you know, because sometimes I'll go to church with family members or on a holiday, or people, you know, bother me enough to go with them or whatever it is, like I'll go, you know, but it's hard for me to have the middleman. You know, I feel like it's a middleman and it's not a direct connection. And then it's like, oh, well, you know, if the guy's up there and he's talking about, you know, warfare and war and this, and he's, you know, referencing something from 2,000 years ago, and it's like, to me, it becomes theater arts sometimes. And it's like, nah, you're not, if I feel you self-actuated what you're talking about, I'm all in. I'm all in. If I feel like you haven't, then it's like,
credibility goes out the window.
Yeah, and it's just like, here, I'll be here and support you guys.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate your journey, your ability to tell your story, and your openness and willingness to tell it, because there's a lot of heavy stuff in that path that you know, a lot of people wouldn't want to share, or, you know, wouldn't be comfortable doing. So I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to come here and sit down and tell some stories over again for, you know, a number of times, but just been a real honor to be able to sit down with you, meet you, and ultimately interview you, and I appreciate it. Absolutely.
I hope it creates some impact.
Yeah, for sure it will. For the listener/viewer, I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.